Cold water. Darkness. My mother's laughter fading above me as I sank. They pushed me off our yacht on my 35th birthday. Not an accident, a calculated execution. My sister Victoria stood at the railing with that smile. My mother didn't even pretend to look upset. They thought they were inheriting my $3.8 billion empire. They thought I'd be gone. What they didn't know, I'd spent 12 years preparing for this exact moment. And what I did next destroyed them completely. If you're interested in this gist, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. My name is Sophia Morgan. I'm 35 years old, and until the night my family tried to murder me, I was the founder and CEO of a cybersecurity firm worth $47 million. Yeah, not billion yet. We'll get to that number later, trust me. But standing on that yacht in Newport Beach, watching my family celebrate a birthday they didn't even know was mine, I might as well have been a ghost already. The party wasn't for me. Of course it wasn't. The invitations my mother sent out 2 weeks prior said, "Morgan Family Celebration. No name, no occasion." When I arrived, I understood immediately. The banner read, "Congratulations, Victoria," in obnoxious gold letters. My sister had landed a consulting contract worth maybe $30,000. You'd think she cured cancer from the way my mother paraded her around. I stood near the champagne table refilling glasses, greeting guests my mother didn't feel like talking to. Always the help, never the guest of honor. Here's what you need to understand about my family. Victoria was introduced with her full biography, her education, her interests, her accomplishments both real and completely fabricated. I was introduced as our other daughter, with a vague hand gesture, like I was furniture that came with a yacht rental. "Sophia, darling, could you check on the coats?" My mother appeared at my elbow, not even looking at me. "Some guests are getting cold." I nodded. I always nodded. That's what the invisible daughter does. I'd stopped expecting acknowledgement years ago. That's why I built my business 800 miles away in Seattle. Far enough they couldn't meddle. Close enough I could still show up for occasions like this, though I'm never sure why I bother. Maybe it's hope. That stubborn, stupid kind that refuses to die even when you know better. I was arranging coats below deck when Victoria found me. For one idiotic second, I thought she'd come to help. Then I saw the velvet box in her hands. "Sophia." She said my name like you'd speak to a child you're about to patronize. "I wanted to give you something before everyone else." She opened it. Our grandmother's pearls. The necklace Mother always said would go to her firstborn daughter. To me. "Victoria, I can't." "Yes, you can." She fastened it around my neck before I could protest. "Mother and I talked about it. This should have been yours years ago. You're the oldest, after all." Something in my chest cracked open. Not broke, opened. Like a door I'd kept locked finally receiving a key. "Thank you," I whispered. And I meant it. My fingers touched the smooth pearls, cool against my skin. "This means more than you know." Victoria smiled, squeezed my shoulder, and left. I stood there staring at my reflection in the cabin's small mirror. For the first time in decades, I felt like I belonged to this family. Like maybe all those years of being overlooked were finally behind me. I was still touching the necklace when I heard Victoria's voice from the deck above. The cabin ventilation carried sounds strangely. You could hear conversations if you stood in certain spots. I wouldn't have paid attention except I heard my name. Perfect gift for someone who won't be around to wear it much longer, right? Victoria's laugh was light. Casual. Mother thinks I'm being too obvious, but honestly, who's going to suspect? I froze. The necklace suddenly felt heavy. Not like jewelry. Like a collar. Like bait. My hand moved to my throat, fingers closing around the pearls. This wasn't reconciliation. This was theater. A performance I hadn't known I was part of, and I just walked on stage right on cue. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of terrible clarity. Every smile from Victoria carried new meaning. Every time my mother looked past me, I understood it differently. I watched my father across the deck laughing with business associates and realized he'd positioned himself as far from me as possible. He always did that when something uncomfortable was about to happen. When I was 10 and got blamed for plagiarism I didn't commit, he'd found urgent business elsewhere. When I was 16 and they made me give up Stanford, he'd been traveling. He didn't participate in sacrificing his eldest daughter. He just made sure he wasn't there to witness it. The pattern had always been there. I just refused to see it. At 10, they'd made me take the fall for another student's cheating so Victoria's reputation at the same school wouldn't be affected by association. Someone has to take the fall, Mother had said. Better you than her. At 16, they'd convinced me to decline a full-ride scholarship to Stanford. Your sister needs the family resources more. You've always been more independent. I went to community college. Victoria went to USC on my scholarship money and dropped out after 2 years. At 22, they'd asked me to loan Victoria $50,000 for a boutique that failed within 6 months. When I asked about repayment, Father said, "Family doesn't keep score." But they did keep score. They just made sure I was always in debt. Last Thanksgiving, Victoria had pulled me aside after dinner. "Why do you even come back? It's not like anyone here needs you." I'd left early, driven through the night back to Seattle, and hadn't returned until today. My birthday. The one no one remembered. Late in the evening, I found my mother alone on the deck, looking out at the dark water. For a moment, I considered asking her directly, confronting whatever was happening. But before I could speak, she said, "Every family needs someone willing to sacrifice for the greater good. That's just how it works, Sophia. You've always understood that." She said it the way you'd explain that water is wet or the sky is blue. A fundamental truth requiring no debate. I didn't argue. I'd heard versions of this my entire life. But something crystallized in that moment. If everything has a price, if love is conditional, if sacrifice is mandatory, then eventually accounts must be settled. I touched the pearl necklace one more time. Payment in advance for what comes next. An hour later, I stood alone at the yacht's railing, looking at my reflection in the black water below. The party had moved inside. Music and laughter drifted through the windows, muffled and distant. I thought, if I disappeared tonight, would they miss me, or would they just feel relieved they could stop pretending? The answer came 60 seconds later. I felt hands on my back. A hard, decisive shove. The railing disappeared. The night sky spun. And then there was nothing but cold water closing over my head. And above me, fading fast, the sound of my mother's laughter. But here's what they didn't know. I'd been preparing for them to show their true faces for 12 years. And what happened next? They walked right into every trap I'd set. The cold hit me like a physical blow. Not just cold, violently, shockingly cold, the kind that stops your heart before the water fills your lungs. I went under fast, the weight of my dress pulling me down, the pearls around my neck suddenly feeling like an anchor. For a few seconds, maybe 10, maybe 30, I couldn't think. Couldn't process. My brain was just screaming one word over and over: survive. I kicked hard, fighting the dress, fighting the water, fighting the realization that my family had just tried to kill me. When my head broke the surface, I gasped, choking on salt water and shock. The yacht was already moving away. Not quickly, but deliberately. They weren't stopping. They weren't turning around. They weren't calling for help. I could see figures on the deck, silhouettes against the light. One of them, I'm pretty sure it was Victoria, raised a champagne glass. A toast. To my death. I should have panicked. I should have screamed. Instead, something ice-cold and crystal clear settled over me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of rage. This was planned. Calculated, premeditated murder. And they were sailing away to establish their alibi while I drowned. The nearest shore was maybe half a mile away. In the dark. In a cocktail dress. With a string of pearls that kept catching on my collar. Most people wouldn't make it. Most people would give up, let the water take them, except that this was how their story ended. But here's the thing about being the family scapegoat for 35 years. You get really, really good at surviving things that should destroy you. I kicked off my heels, ripped the necklace from my throat and let it sink. Started swimming. My arms burned. My lungs screamed. Salt water stung my eyes and filled my mouth every time a wave hit. I lost track of time. Could have been 20 minutes. Could have been 2 hours. All I knew was, keep moving or die. And I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. When my feet finally touched sand, I crawled onto the beach like something dragged up from the deep. Collapsed. Threw up seawater. Lay there shaking so hard my teeth rattled. For a long time, I couldn't do anything but breathe. Then I heard footsteps. I looked up, vision blurry, expecting a jogger or a late-night dog walker. Instead, I saw Sarah Martinez, my college roommate. The woman I hadn't spoken to in 3 years because my family had convinced me she was toxic and jealous of my success. Sarah, who lived in Newport Beach. Sarah, who was staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. Sophia. Her voice cracked. Oh my God. Sophia, what happened? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out but a sob. Sarah didn't ask again. She just pulled me up, wrapped her jacket around my shoulders, and said, I've got you. Come on. She took me to her apartment, gave me dry clothes, made tea I couldn't drink, sat with me while I shook and cried and couldn't form sentences. And when I finally managed to whisper, my family tried to kill me, she didn't question it. Didn't doubt. Just nodded and said, okay, what do you need? What did I need? I needed to think. I needed to figure out what came next. Because here's what was running through my mind as I sat on Sarah's couch wrapped in a blanket that smelled like lavender. They thought I was dead. My family genuinely believed they'd gotten away with murder. And that gave me something I'd never had before. Power. The element of surprise. Time. If I came forward immediately, it would be my word against theirs. No witnesses. No evidence. Just a tragic accident and a grieving family. They'd paint me as unstable, paranoid, making wild accusations because I'd always been jealous of Victoria. Best case scenario, it becomes a he said she said investigation that goes nowhere. Worst case, they use it to have me declared mentally incompetent and take my assets anyway. But if I stayed dead, if I let them think they'd won, they'd get comfortable, make mistakes, incriminate themselves. People always do when they think they've gotten away with something. I looked at Sarah. I need you to trust me, and I need you to not tell anyone I'm alive. She searched my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. How long? As long as it takes. The first 3 days were fragments. Gray walls. The sound of rain that made me curl into a ball on Sarah's couch, certain I was drowning again. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt cold water closing over my head. Heard my mother's laughter fading above me. Sarah brought a doctor on day 2. Someone who worked in cash and asked no questions. He treated me for hypothermia and what he called mild pneumonia, though the way he looked at me suggested he knew it was more than that. When he asked what happened, I opened my mouth and nothing came out. He left medication and didn't ask again. Days 4 and 5 were worse. The shock was wearing off, and underneath it was something I didn't have words for. Rage. Grief. Betrayal so deep it felt like my bones were broken. I'd start sentences, I need to, and then couldn't finish them. Sarah would find me crying in the bathroom or staring at nothing or trying to make coffee and forgetting what I was doing halfway through. She never pushed. Just sat with me. Made food I couldn't eat. Said quietly, you don't have to do anything right now. Just rest. But on day 7, something shifted. I was sitting on Sarah's couch staring at my phone when I realized my assistant had probably reported me missing by now. My clients would be wondering where I was. My business, 12 years of work, built from nothing, was sitting unprotected while my family circled it like vultures. The thought cut through the fog in my head like a blade. I looked at Sarah and heard myself say, if I don't do something, they'll take everything I built. I can't let them win. Sarah studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. Tell me what you need and I'll help you. The first thing I needed was my attorney. Thomas Reed had handled my estate planning for 8 years. He knew every legal structure protecting my assets, every contingency I'd built in case something went wrong. When he walked into Sarah's apartment a week later, his first words after seeing me, still bruised, still pale, still shaking, were, "We're calling the police right now." I stopped him. If I come forward now, it's my word against theirs. No witnesses. No evidence. I'm the deranged daughter who fell while drunk. They'll say I'm bitter, paranoid, making accusations. My voice was steadier than I expected. Best case, it's an investigation that goes nowhere. Worst case, they paint me as unstable and that helps them in probate court. Thomas sat down slowly. So what do you want to do? I need them to incriminate themselves. I need evidence. I need time. He was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his laptop. There's something you need to know. Your family filed a petition for declaration of presumed death 3 days ago. He turned the screen toward me. The hearing is scheduled for week 12. If the judge grants it, your assets transfer to your family as next of kin. Once that happens, legally reclaiming them becomes nearly impossible, even if you're alive. You'd have to prove they committed fraud, which means proving attempted murder. The room tilted. So I have 10 weeks to gather evidence, get a confession, and file criminal charges before that hearing. Yes. Thomas met my eyes. After week 12, you lose everything, and the legal path gets exponentially harder. 10 weeks. 70 days to prove my family tried to kill me or watch them inherit the empire I'd built while they thought I was dead. I looked at Thomas and said something I never thought I'd say. Then let's destroy them. Because they made one critical mistake. They assumed the daughter they'd spent 35 years breaking would stay broken. They had no idea what I was capable of when I stopped trying to earn their love and started planning their destruction. Thomas hired a private investigator the next day. Not just any investigator. Marcus Chin, former FBI, specialized in white-collar crime and family fraud cases. The kind of guy who could dig up dirt you didn't even know existed. When he walked into Sarah's apartment, he took one look at me and said, "You're supposed to be dead." "That's the idea," I replied. "Let's keep it that way." Marcus didn't waste time with sympathy or shock. He pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. I need everything. Timeline of events. Family dynamics. Financial structures. Every person who might have known. Every conversation you overheard. Every detail, no matter how small. For 3 hours, I told him everything. The lifetime of being invisible. The pattern of sacrifice. The pearl necklace. Victoria's overheard conversation. The push. The yacht sailing away. When I finished, Marcus leaned back and said, "They're going to make mistakes. Desperate people always do. We just need to be there to document it when they fall apart." He was right. For the following month, I watched my family unravel through surveillance footage, recorded phone calls, and written reports that Marcus delivered to Sarah's apartment every few days. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Week 1, they played grieving family perfectly. Mother gave a tearful interview to a local news station about her beloved daughter, who'd tragically fallen overboard. Victoria posted on social media about how much she'd miss her amazing sister. Father released a statement through his lawyer about the family's devastating loss. It was all performance, all lies. And I watched every second of it from Sarah's couch, taking notes, feeling my rage crystallize into something cold and surgical. Week 2, the cracks started showing. Marcus caught Victoria attempting to access my bank accounts. She was denied, Thank God I'd set up two-factor authentication, and my assistant was the only other person with access codes. But the attempt was documented, time-stamped. Irrefutable proof that my grieving sister was more interested in my money than my body. Week 3, Mother showed up at my Seattle office claiming she needed to collect my personal effects. My assistant, bless her, followed the protocol I'd established years ago for exactly this kind of situation. She called Thomas, who immediately sent security to turn Mother away. Marcus had cameras installed in the lobby. We got footage of Mother screaming that she had rights, that everything I own belonged to the family now, that my assistant was just an employee who should know her place. Where are the offshore accounts? Mother shouted, completely forgetting she was supposed to be grieving. I know Sophia had offshore accounts. You're hiding them. My assistant, stone-faced, replied, I'm not authorized to discuss Ms. Morgan's private financial matters. Please leave or I'll call the police. Mother left. But not before Marcus got 12 minutes of footage showing exactly how much grief she actually felt. Week 4 brought something I didn't expect. Marcus caught Father on video outside a restaurant in Newport Beach, arguing with Mother and Victoria. The audio was crystal clear. This has gone too far, Father shouted loud enough for the camera to pick up. We should tell the police the truth. I stopped breathing when I heard that. For 1 second, one stupid, hopeful second, I thought maybe Father actually had a conscience. Then Mother grabbed his arm and hissed something I couldn't hear. Father's shoulders slumped. He nodded. They went back inside together. He didn't call the police. He didn't tell the truth. He just went home with them and stayed quiet the way he'd stayed quiet my entire life. I watched that footage 6 times. Each time hoping I'd see something different. Each time seeing the same thing. A man who knew what his family had done and chose comfort over courage. Thomas saw my face when I finished watching. Are you okay? No, I said. But I will be. Week 5 was when things got really interesting. Marcus discovered Victoria was meeting with loan sharks. Not banks, actual predatory lenders charging 30% interest. She was taking out loans using her future inheritance as collateral. Loans she'd have to repay once my assets transferred to the family. Except my assets weren't transferring. Because I wasn't dead. Which meant Victoria was racking up massive debt based on money she'd never receive. She's desperate, Marcus said, showing me the surveillance photos. She's got creditors calling. She made promises she can't keep. And desperate people do stupid things. Like murder their sister? Like confess to murdering their sister. He was right. Week 6 brought the breakthrough we needed. Marcus had been monitoring Victoria's communications, legally questionable, but admissible if we could get her to repeat the information under oath. She'd been texting with someone named Elena, apparently a friend from college. The texts were damning. Victoria, I can't believe how long this is taking. It's been 6 weeks. When do we get the money? Elena, these things take time. Are you sure she's not coming back? Victoria, trust me. She's gone. I made sure of it. Elena, that sounds ominous. Victoria, it was necessary. She was always going to be in the way. I read those texts and felt something cold settle in my stomach. She was bragging. Actually bragging about killing me to her friend. Thomas read them and immediately called his contact at the Seattle PD. We need to bring in law enforcement. Now. But I hesitated. If we go to the police now, what happens? They open an investigation. Interview your family. Possibly make arrests. Possibly. Without you testifying, without physical evidence from that night, it's still circumstantial. Good circumstantial, but not guaranteed. I shook my head. Not good enough. I need a confession. I need them on record admitting what they did. Otherwise, it's my word against theirs and I've been dead for 6 weeks, which makes me look unstable. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, there's someone you should meet. Detective Lisa Rodriguez. She works organized crime and fraud. And she's very good at getting people to talk. Detective Rodriguez came to Sarah's apartment the next day. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with a kind of presence that made you sit up straighter without realizing it. She listened to my entire story without interrupting, looked at Marcus's evidence, read the texts, watched the surveillance footage. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "This should be attempted murder. Why didn't you come forward immediately?" "Because I wanted to make sure they couldn't talk their way out of it," I said. "I wanted evidence. I wanted them trapped." Rodriguez studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You want them on tape?" "Yes. That's risky. If they suspect anything, they'll lawyer up and we lose our chance." "They won't suspect," I said. "They think I'm dead. They think they won. Arrogance makes people careless." Rodriguez smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I like you. Okay. Here's what we're going to do." The plan took shape over the next 2 weeks. Rodriguez would go undercover as a private investigator hired by a concerned family friend. She'd approach Victoria carefully, build trust, and create a scenario where Victoria would feel safe confessing. It was risky. It was complicated. It required perfect timing and a lot of luck. But it was our best shot. Week 7, Rodriguez made first contact. She approached Victoria at a coffee shop in Newport Beach, introduced herself as an investigator looking into my disappearance. Victoria was immediately defensive. "We already talked to the Coast Guard. It was an accident. Why is anyone still investigating?" "Just routine," Rodriguez said smoothly. "Tying up loose ends. You know how it is with estates this size. Everyone wants to make sure everything's legitimate." Victoria relaxed slightly. "Of course. We want everything handled properly. Sophia would have wanted that." The lie came so easily, like she'd practiced it. Rodriguez met with Victoria 2 more times over the next week, each time gaining more trust, each time pushing a little harder. And then, in week 8, she played her final card. "Here's the thing," Rodriguez said, leaning in close. "There's a witness. Someone who saw something that night on the yacht. They haven't come forward yet, but they're asking questions, making noise. And I'm concerned about what they might say." Victoria's face went pale. "A witness? To what? There's nothing to witness. It was an accident." "Was it?" Rodriguez let the question hang in the air. "Because this witness seems to think otherwise. And I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to make this go away before it becomes a problem." Victoria stared at her for a long moment. And then, quietly, she said, "What would it take to make them stay quiet?" Rodriguez had her. "Everyone has a price. The question is whether you're willing to pay it." And that's when my sister made the mistake that would destroy her. She started talking, and every word was being recorded. I watched the recording in Thomas's office 3 days later. Sarah sat beside me, her hand gripping mine. Thomas stood behind his desk, arms crossed. Marcus was there too, along with Detective Rodriguez. Everyone was silent as the video played. Victoria sat across from Rodriguez in that coffee shop, looking nervous but trying to hide it. Rodriguez had positioned herself perfectly. The camera angle caught Victoria's face, every micro-expression, every tell. "So about this witness," Victoria said, her voice low. "What exactly did they see?" Rodriguez leaned back, casual. "They saw an argument. They saw someone go over the railing. And they saw the yacht leave without stopping." Victoria's hands were shaking. She wrapped them around her coffee cup to hide it. That's not what happened. We didn't know she went overboard until later. We thought she'd gone to bed." "Really?" Rodriguez tilted her head. "Because the timeline doesn't match that story. The yacht kept moving for 20 minutes after she went in. No distress call. No turning back. Just kept sailing. We were inside. We didn't know. But Victoria's voice was cracking. Rodriguez could hear it. I could hear it. Victoria, I'm trying to help you here. But this witness is asking questions I can't answer. Questions about why no one called for help. Why the family filed for presumed death so quickly. Why you tried to access her bank accounts 2 days after she disappeared. Victoria's face crumpled. You don't understand. It's not like we planned it. It just happened. There it was. The first crack. Rodriguez pushed harder. What happened exactly? We were arguing. About money. About the business. Sophia always acted like she was better than us just because she made something of herself. Like we didn't matter. Like family didn't matter. Victoria's voice was rising now, defensive. She said she was cutting us off. No more loans. No more bailouts. Said we needed to learn to stand on our own. So you argued, Rodriguez prompted. And then what? And then? Victoria stopped, looked around the coffee shop, lowered her voice. And then Mother said this had to end. That Sophia was going to destroy this family with her selfishness. That we had to do something. Do something, Rodriguez repeated. What does that mean? Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, we confronted her. At the railing. Mother and I. We told her she was being unreasonable. That family takes care of family. And Sophia just laughed at us. Said we weren't her family anymore. Said we'd never been her family. I felt Sarah's grip tighten on my hand. On screen, Victoria was crying now. She said she was going to cut us out of her will. Out of everything. That we'd get nothing when she died. Nothing. Rodriguez leaned forward. So what did you do? I pushed her. The words came out in a whisper. I pushed her and she went over the railing and into the water. And Mother said we couldn't call for help because how would it look? How would we explain it? We'd been arguing about money. Everyone would think we killed her. Did you kill her? Rodriguez asked. The question hung in the air. Victoria's face was a mess of tears and smeared makeup. What's the difference now? She's gone. The Coast Guard searched for 3 days and found nothing. It doesn't matter what we intended. The result is the same. But you pushed her, Rodriguez said. Yes. On purpose. She was going to destroy us, Victoria said, her voice hardening. She left us no choice. Rodriguez sat back. And the pearl necklace? Your grandmother's necklace? Why did you give that to her that night? Victoria actually laughed. A bitter, broken sound. Insurance. If anyone questioned what happened, we could say we just reconciled. That I'd given her this meaningful family heirloom. Who would suspect sisters who'd just made peace? It was Mother's idea. She said we needed a narrative. I stopped the video. Couldn't watch anymore. My hands were shaking. Thomas's voice was quiet. That's a full confession. Premeditation. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. We have her. What about California law? I asked. One-party consent state, Rodriguez said. I'm a party to that conversation. The recording is completely legal and admissible in court. So we go to the police now, Sarah said. We show them this and they arrest her. But I shook my head. Not yet. Everyone turned to look at me. Sophia, Thomas said carefully. We have what we need. If we wait, I want Mother on tape too, I said. My voice was cold. Controlled. Victoria confessed. But Mother planned it. Mother gave her the necklace idea. Mother told her not to call for help. I want her confession too. Rodriguez nodded slowly. It'll be harder. Your mother is more controlled than Victoria. She won't crack as easily. Then we'll have to make her crack. Marcus pulled out his tablet. I have something. Week 9 surveillance. Your mother met with father at their estate. Private conversation in the garden. We got audio. He played it. Mother's voice, sharp and annoyed. Victoria is falling apart. Crying all the time. Drawing attention. We need to get control of Sophia's assets before someone starts asking real questions. Father's voice, tired. Maybe we should just tell the truth. This has gone too far. The truth. Mother laughed. The truth is our daughter tried to destroy this family, and we stopped her. That's all anyone needs to know. We killed her, Patricia. We defended ourselves. There's a difference. Father was silent for a moment. Then, I keep seeing her face. When she went over the railing, she looked so surprised. Like she couldn't believe we'd actually do it. Well, Mother said coldly, she should have believed it. I told her years ago that every family needs someone willing to sacrifice. She just never understood she was the sacrifice. The recording ended. The room was silent. I felt something break inside me. Not break, shatter. Because hearing my mother say those words, with that level of casual cruelty, destroyed the last tiny piece of hope I'd been carrying. The hope that maybe she'd loved me once. That maybe there was something worth saving in our relationship. There wasn't. There never had been. I want her arrested, I said. I want her in handcuffs. I want her in court. I want the world to hear what she just said. Thomas nodded. We'll need to coordinate with the prosecutor's office. Build an airtight case. This isn't just about getting them arrested. It's about making sure they stay arrested. Making sure they're convicted. Rodriguez pulled out her phone. I know someone at the King County Prosecutor's Office. Carol Menendez. She handles high-profile family violence cases. If anyone can make this stick, it's her. Set up a meeting, I said. I want to tell her myself. I want to look her in the eye and tell her what my family did. Over the next week, we built our case. Marcus compiled every piece of surveillance footage, every recorded conversation, every financial transaction showing Victoria's desperation and Mother's manipulation. Thomas organized the legal documentation proving my assets, my business, everything they'd tried to steal. Rodriguez coordinated with the Seattle PD and the Coast Guard to cross-reference timelines and establish opportunity. And I wrote my statement. 35 years of abuse, neglect, and sacrifice, distilled into 15 pages of clear, factual testimony. When we met with Prosecutor Menendez, she read everything twice, watched the recordings, listened to the audio. Then she looked at me and said, "This is one of the most clear-cut cases of attempted murder I've ever seen. The only question is, are you ready for what comes next?" "What comes next?" I asked. "Your family will destroy you in the press. They'll call you a liar. They'll say you faked your death for attention. They'll drag every mistake you've ever made into public view. Your life will become a circus." "Good," I said. "Let them try. Because I have something they don't." "What's that?" "The truth. And evidence. And a confession on tape." Menendez smiled. "Then let's end them." Week 10, we finalized the plan. Week 11, we coordinated with law enforcement and set the trap. My family thought they were attending a routine probate hearing. They thought they were 1 week away from inheriting my empire. They thought they'd won. What they didn't know was that I'd been alive the entire time, watching, recording, building a case that would destroy them so completely they'd never recover. On day 91, exactly 13 weeks after they pushed me off that yacht, I walked into a prosecutor's office and saw my family for the first time since they'd murdered me. And the looks on their faces when they realized I was alive? That was worth every single day I'd spent planning their destruction. Because they'd spent my entire life teaching me that sacrifice was necessary. And I was about to teach them what real sacrifice looks like. Day 91. The morning I stopped being dead. I stood in Sarah's bathroom staring at my reflection, trying to recognize the woman looking back at me. 13 weeks ago, I'd been invisible. The daughter who didn't matter. The sister who existed only to be sacrificed. Now I was something else entirely. Something harder, colder, more dangerous. I put on a navy business suit, pulled my hair back into a severe bun, applied makeup carefully, covering the last traces of bruises that had long since faded. I looked powerful, controlled. Nothing like the woman who'd crawled out of the ocean 3 months ago. Sarah appeared in the doorway. "You ready for this?" "I've been ready for 35 years, I said. "I just didn't know it until they tried to kill me." We drove to the King County Prosecutor's office in silence. Thomas met us in the parking garage along with Detective Rodriguez and Marcus. Thomas handed me a folder. "Everything you need. Timeline. Evidence summary. Your statement. Carol Menendez is waiting inside. Your family should arrive in about 20 minutes. They think it's the probate hearing," I said. "Exactly. They think they're about to inherit your fortune. Instead, they're about to meet you." I took the folder. My hands were steady. "Let's do this." Inside, Prosecutor Menendez was waiting in conference room B. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. She shook my hand firmly. "Ms. Morgan, I've been looking forward to meeting you. Or should I say, meeting you again? Since officially, you've been dead for 3 months." "Officially," I agreed. "How do you want to play this?" "Simple. They'll come in expecting a routine meeting with their attorney about finalizing your estate. Thomas will be here as their legal representative. They think he's working for them now. Then you walk in. We gauge their reaction. And depending on what they say, we either arrest them immediately or let them dig themselves deeper." "I want them to dig," I said. "I want them to lie to my face one more time before we put the cuffs on." Menendez smiled. It wasn't warm. "I like your style." We watched through the one-way mirror as my family arrived. Mother came in first, wearing all black like she was still in mourning. Very theatrical. Very on-brand. She carried a designer handbag that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Victoria followed, looking thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes that even expensive concealer couldn't hide. The debt was eating her alive. Good. Father came last, walking slowly, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Part of me felt sorry for him. The rest of me remembered him watching them plan my murder and saying nothing. They settled into chairs around the conference table. Mother adjusted her pearls, not the grandmother's necklace. Those were at the bottom of the ocean. Different pearls. Victoria checked her phone obsessively. Father just stared at his hands. "They look nervous," Rodriguez observed. "Victoria keeps touching her neck. Classic anxiety tell." "She knows something's wrong," Marcus said. "She just doesn't know what yet." Thomas entered the conference room. My family looked up expectantly. Mother spoke first. "Thomas, thank you for arranging this meeting. We're eager to finalize everything. It's been a difficult 3 months." "I understand," Thomas said neutrally. "There are just a few items we need to clarify before we proceed." "Of course," Mother said. "Whatever you need. We just want to honor Sophia's memory and ensure her legacy is preserved." The lie came so smoothly, like she actually believed it. Victoria nodded eagerly. "We've been thinking about starting a foundation in her name, for cybersecurity education or something. Sophia would have wanted that." I almost laughed. They were already planning how to spend my money while pretending to honor my memory. "Actually," Thomas said, "before we proceed, there's someone who'd like to speak with you. Someone with information about Sophia's disappearance." Mother's expression flickered. Just for a second. Information? What kind of information? The Coast Guard closed the case. They said it was an accidental drowning. "Nevertheless," Thomas said. This person has been very insistent about sharing what they know, and I think you'll want to hear it. That was my cue. I took a breath, opened the door, and walked into that conference room like I was walking onto a stage. The silence was absolute. Mother's face went white. Actually white, like someone had drained all the blood from her body. Victoria made a sound, not quite a scream, more like a choked gasp. Her hand flew to her mouth. Father stood up so fast his chair fell backward. 4-5 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. They just stared at me like I was a ghost. Which, I suppose, I was. "Hello, Mother," I said calmly. "Victoria." "Father." Surprise. Victoria found her voice first. It came out high-pitched, desperate. "Sophia? Oh my God, Sophia, where have you been? We thought you were dead. We've been so worried." She started to stand, like she was going to hug me. "Sit down," I said. My voice was ice. "And stop lying." Victoria froze halfway out of her chair. "Lying? What are you?" I said. "Sit down." She sat. Mother had recovered slightly. Her face was still pale, but she was regaining composure. "Calculating. Sophia, darling, we don't understand. Where have you been for 3 months? We searched for you. The Coast Guard searched. We thought you drowned." "You did think I drowned," I agreed. "Because you watched me go into the water and you sailed away without calling for help." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Father made a sound like a wounded animal. Mother's expression went carefully blank. Victoria started shaking her head. "No, no, that's not what happened. You fell. It was an accident. We didn't know you went overboard until later." "Stop," I said. "Just stop. I know what happened. I know you pushed me. I know Mother told you to give me the necklace to establish a narrative. I know you argued about money before deciding I had to die. I know everything." Victoria's face crumpled. "Sophia, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You tried to murder me so you could inherit my business. You failed. And now you're going to pay for it." Mother stood up slowly. Her voice was cold, controlled. "You can't prove any of this. It's your word against ours. You disappeared for 3 months without contacting anyone. That makes you look unstable, paranoid. Any judge will see that." "Will they?" I smiled. It felt like ice cracking. "Let me tell you what else I know. I know Victoria took out predatory loans using my assets as collateral. I know you tried to access my bank accounts 2 days after I disappeared. I know Father heard you planning it and said nothing. I know you told Father that I tried to destroy the family and you stopped me. Should I continue?" Mother's composure cracked slightly. "You've been watching us?" "For 13 weeks, I confirmed. Every move, every conversation, every mistake you made while you thought I was dead." "That's illegal," Mother said. "Surveillance without consent is perfectly legal when you're investigating attempted murder," Detective Rodriguez said, stepping into the room. She showed her badge. "Detective Lisa Rodriguez, Seattle PD. And before you claim anything was obtained illegally, you should know I've been conducting an authorized investigation for the past 6 weeks." Victoria started crying. Real tears now, not the crocodile tears she'd cried for the cameras. "This isn't fair. You set us up. This is entrapment." "Entrapment is when law enforcement convinces you to commit a crime you wouldn't have otherwise committed," Rodriguez said. "You already committed the crime. We just gave you an opportunity to confess to it. Which you did. On tape. With full Miranda warnings, which I'll be reading to you in just a moment." Father finally spoke. His voice was broken. "Sophia, please. I know we failed you. I know I failed you. But they're still your family. Your mother, your sister. Don't do this." I looked at this man who'd taught me to swim, who'd let me take the fall for plagiarism at 10, who'd said nothing when they planned to kill me. "You're right," I said quietly. "They are my family. And that makes what they did so much worse." Prosecutor Menendez entered with 2 more detectives. "Victoria Morgan, Patricia Morgan, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted first-degree murder, and fraud." Victoria started screaming. "No, no, this isn't happening. Sophia, please. We're family. You can't do this to us." The detectives moved to handcuff her. Victoria fought, still screaming. "We searched for you. We grieved for you. We loved you. You pushed me off a yacht," I said clearly. "You watched me drown. And then you tried to steal everything I built. That's not love. That's murder." Mother was silent as they cuffed her. She just stared at me with something that looked like hatred mixed with disbelief. Like she couldn't comprehend that the invisible daughter had actually fought back. As they led her toward the door, she finally spoke. "You were always selfish, Sophia. Always putting yourself first. This family needed you to sacrifice, and you couldn't even do that right." I stared at her. "I did sacrifice. For 35 years. But you're right about one thing. I couldn't even get murdered right. Sorry to disappoint you." She didn't respond. Just turned away as the detective guided her out. Victoria was still crying, still protesting. "How long have you been alive? When did you start planning this?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. "I've been alive since the moment I hit the water. And I've been planning this since the moment I realized my family would rather see me dead than see me succeed." Father stood in the corner, watching his wife and daughter being arrested, tears streaming down his face. He looked at me. "Are you going to arrest me too?" "That depends," I said. "On what?" "On whether you're willing to tell the truth. All of it. Every conversation you heard. Every moment you knew what they were planning and stayed silent. Because right now, you're an accessory to attempted murder. But if you cooperate, if you testify to what you know, maybe you walk away from this without prison time." Father was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll tell you everything. I'll testify. I'll do whatever you need." "Good," I said. Then I turned to Thomas. "Get him a deal in writing. I want his testimony locked down before he changes his mind." As Father was escorted out to give his statement, I stood alone in that conference room with Sarah, Thomas, Rodriguez, and Menendez. My legs were shaking. I sat down before they gave out. Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I will be." Thomas sat across from me. "They're going to fight this. They'll get lawyers. They'll claim you're vindictive, that you orchestrated the whole thing, that the recordings are inadmissible." "Let them fight," I said. "We have Victoria's confession on tape. We have Mother on audio admitting to planning it. We have Father as a witness. We have financial records, surveillance footage, and 3 months of documented evidence. What do they have? Money for good lawyers," Thomas said. "And the sympathy card. They'll play the grieving family who's being punished by a vengeful daughter who faked her own death." I smiled. Cold and sharp. "Then I guess we'll see who the jury believes. The daughter who survived attempted murder? Or the family who tried to inherit her fortune?" And here's what I realized in that moment. They taught me to be invisible, to be small, to sacrifice everything for their comfort. But what they didn't teach me, what they never saw coming, was that invisible people see everything. And small people can become giants when you push them too far. The arrests made national news within 6 hours. By evening, every major outlet was running the story. Tech CEO survives family murder plot. Sisters arrested after attempted murder of heiress. Newport Beach family accused of pushing daughter off yacht. My phone, the new one I'd gotten after coming back from the dead, exploded with messages. Former colleagues. Business contacts. People I hadn't spoken to in years, all suddenly very interested in my well-being. I ignored most of them. The only calls I took were from my assistant, my board of directors, and the few people who'd actually cared about me before I became a headline. My assistant cried when she heard my voice. I knew something was wrong. I knew it. Your family kept calling, trying to get access to your files, and I just knew they were lying about grieving. You did exactly right, I told her. You protected everything I built. Thank you. The board of directors was less emotional and more practical. They wanted to know when I'd be back in the office, whether the company's reputation would be damaged, how we'd handle the media circus. I scheduled a call for the following week. For now, I had other priorities, like watching my family's defense strategy unfold in real time. Victoria's lawyer held a press conference 2 days after the arrest. He stood on the courthouse steps looking grave and professional. My client maintains her innocence. Ms. Victoria Morgan is a loving sister who has been falsely accused by a sibling who abandoned her family for 3 months without explanation. We believe the evidence will show that what happened on that yacht was a tragic accident, and that Ms. Sophia Morgan's subsequent actions demonstrate a pattern of vindictive behavior designed to harm her family. The reporter asked, "But there's a recorded confession where your client admits to pushing her sister overboard?" That recording was obtained through deceptive practices by law enforcement, the lawyer said smoothly. We'll be filing a motion to suppress it. Additionally, my client was in an extremely vulnerable emotional state when that conversation occurred. She was being manipulated by someone she believed was trying to help her. It was a good strategy. I'd give them that. Paint Victoria as the victim. Make me look like the villain. Suggest the confession was coerced. Get it thrown out on a technicality. Except they were forgetting one thing. We had a lot more evidence than just that confession. Thomas called me that night. They're going to fight the recording. Motion to suppress is scheduled for next week. Will it work? I asked. No. Rodriguez followed every protocol. The recording is clean. But it'll delay things. Give them time to build a narrative. Let them build, I said. The longer this takes, the more mistakes they'll make. I was right. Over the next 2 weeks, my family's legal team made a series of catastrophic decisions. First, they released my childhood medical records to the press, trying to establish that I had a history of mental health issues. Depression at 15. Anxiety at 17. Therapy after college. See, their narrative went. She's always been unstable. This whole thing is an elaborate delusion brought on by mental illness. Except they forgot that having depression doesn't make you a liar. And releasing someone's private medical records without consent? That's illegal. Thomas filed a lawsuit for invasion of privacy before their press conference even ended. Second, Mother gave an interview to a sympathetic journalist. She sat in her living room, surrounded by family photos, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. I don't know where we went wrong, she said. We loved Sophia. We tried to include her. But she always felt like we favored Victoria, even though that wasn't true. She was so jealous, so angry. And now she's trying to destroy us because of her own insecurity. The journalist asked, what about the evidence? The recordings, the testimony? Fabricated, Mother said firmly. Or taken out of context. That's not who we are. That's not who I raised my daughters to be. The interview aired on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, Marcus had released the audio of Mother saying, she should have believed we'd actually do it. I told her every family needs someone willing to sacrifice. She just never understood she was the sacrifice. Directly contradicting everything Mother had just said on national television. Caught lying. On camera. The journalist issued a retraction and apology. Mother's credibility was destroyed. Third, and this was the big one, Victoria's college friend Elena came forward. The one Victoria had been texting about the murder. She walked into the prosecutor's office with her lawyer and said, I need to make a statement. Victoria told me she killed her sister. Multiple times. I have texts, voicemails, everything. And I can't stay quiet anymore. Elena brought receipts. Literal receipts. Months of conversations where Victoria had hinted about taking care of the Sophia problem. A voicemail from 2 years ago where Victoria drunkenly said, "Sometimes I wish she'd just disappear." Like, actually disappear. Then maybe Mother would finally see me. Text messages from the week before my birthday. "I'm done being the disappointing daughter. After this weekend, everything changes." Elena sat across from Prosecutor Menendez and said, "I thought she was just venting. Just being dramatic. I didn't think she'd actually do it. But after I saw the news, after I realized Sophia was really gone, I started going through our conversations. And I realized Victoria had been planning this for years. She'd been working up to it." Menendez asked, "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Because she's my friend," Elena said, crying now. "Was my friend. And I didn't want to believe it. But then I saw Sophia on the news, alive, and I realized if I stayed quiet, I was protecting someone who tried to commit murder. I couldn't live with that." Elena's testimony changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just about one bad night on a yacht. This was premeditated, planned, years in the making. Victoria's lawyer tried to discredit Elena, called her a clout chaser, said she was making things up for attention. But the texts were time-stamped. The voicemails were authenticated. And Elena had nothing to gain except a clean conscience. The motion to suppress the confession was denied. The judge reviewed all the evidence, the texts, the recordings, Elena's testimony, father's statement, and said, "I see no basis for suppression." Detective Rodriguez acted appropriately. The defendant confessed voluntarily. Motion denied. Victoria's lawyer looked like he'd been punched. Mother's lawyer immediately filed for a separate trial. "Our client's case is distinct from her daughter's. They should not be tried together." Menendez fought it. These defendants conspired together. They planned together. They acted together. Separating the trials would be inefficient and potentially unjust. The judge agreed. Joint trial. Both defendants together. Exactly what we wanted. Because it meant they couldn't blame each other without implicating themselves. Father's deal came through in week 4. Full immunity in exchange for complete cooperation. He'd testify to every conversation he'd overheard. Every moment he'd suspected something was wrong. Every time he'd chosen silence over protecting me. Thomas brought me the signed agreement. He's locked in. He can't back out now without losing immunity and facing charges himself. "Good," I said. But I didn't feel good. I felt hollow. Because my father had just signed a legal document promising to testify against his wife and daughter to save himself. The same way he'd stayed silent to avoid conflict. The same pattern, just in a different context. Sarah found me that night sitting on her couch, staring at nothing. "You okay?" "My father chose himself again," I said. "Just like he always does. Except this time, he's choosing himself by telling the truth. And somehow that feels worse." "Why worse?" "Because it means he always knew the truth. He always saw what they were doing to me. He just didn't care enough to stop it until it benefited him to speak up." Sarah sat beside me. "You know what I think. I think your father is a coward. He always has been. But cowards can still be useful. And right now, his testimony is going to put your mother and sister away for a long time. So use him. Let him be useful for once in his pathetic life." I looked at her. "When did you get so ruthless?" "When I pulled you out of the ocean and realized the people who were supposed to love you had tried to kill you," she said. "I've been angry for 3 months. Now I'm channeling it productively." I laughed. Actual laughter. For the first time since the arrests, something in my chest loosened. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For being angrier at them than I am sometimes. for reminding me that I'm not crazy for wanting justice. You're not crazy, Sarah said firmly. You're the sanest person I know. You survived murder. You built a case. You're taking them down legally and systematically. That's not crazy. That's impressive as hell. Week 5 brought the preliminary hearing. Both sides presented evidence. The prosecution showed the recordings, the texts, Elena's testimony, the financial motive. The defense argued it was all circumstantial, that the recordings were ambiguous, that Victoria's confession was taken out of context, that I was a disgruntled daughter with an axe to grind. The judge listened to everything. Then he said, I find sufficient evidence to bind both defendants over for trial. Trial date is set for 8 weeks from today. Both defendants will remain in custody without bail due to flight risk and the severity of the charges. Victoria started crying in court. Your Honor, please, I have a life. I have responsibilities. I'm not a flight risk. Ms. Morgan, the judge said, his voice flat, you're accused of attempting to murder your sister and then trying to steal her assets. You accumulated significant debt based on an inheritance you were trying to fraudulently obtain. You have both motive and means to flee. Bail is denied. Mother didn't cry. She just sat there stone-faced, staring straight ahead. But I saw her hands. They were shaking. As they led them back to holding, Victoria turned and looked at me. Her eyes were red and swollen and full of something I couldn't quite identify. Hatred, regret, fear. She mouthed something. I couldn't tell what it was. I didn't care. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ms. Morgan, how does it feel to face your family in court? Ms. Morgan, do you think you'll get justice? Ms. Morgan, what do you want people to know about your family? I stopped. Thomas had advised against speaking to the press. But I had something I needed to say. I want people to know that family is supposed to be a safety net. It's supposed to be the place where you're loved unconditionally, where you're protected, where you matter. I paused. My family taught me that I was disposable, that my worth was measured by what I could sacrifice for them. They taught me to be invisible. And when I finally became visible, when I finally built something that mattered, they tried to erase me permanently. Another pause. But here's what they didn't count on. Invisible people see everything. And the daughter they threw away, she learned to swim. The reporters erupted with follow-up questions. I ignored them, walked to the car where Sarah was waiting, and drove away. That night, the clip went viral. The daughter they threw away learned to swim became a hashtag. Survivors of family abuse started sharing their stories, talking about being scapegoated, being sacrificed, being erased. My story had become bigger than me. It had become a rallying cry for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't matter by the people who should have loved them most. And my family. They were sitting in jail cells, watching it all unfold, realizing that in trying to erase me, they'd made me impossible to ignore. But we were just getting started, because the trial hadn't even begun yet. And what came out in that courtroom would make the arrests look like a warm-up. 3 weeks before trial, Thomas walked into Sarah's apartment carrying a box. Not a small box. A banker's box, the kind that holds thousands of pages of documents. He set it on the coffee table with a heavy thud. You need to see this, he said. His face was pale. What is it? I asked. Victoria's personal files. Seized during the warrant execution. Her laptop, her phone, her iPad. Forensic analysts have been going through everything. He opened the box, and they found her journal. Journal. Sarah leaned forward. Like a diary? Digital diary. Password-protected blog she kept for 7 years. She thought she deleted it, but nothing's ever really deleted. The forensic team recovered everything. Thomas pulled out a thick printout. Sophia, this changes everything we thought we knew about your sister. I took the printout. My hands were shaking. The first entry was dated 7 years ago, right after I'd moved to Seattle to start my business. Sophia called today to invite me to her housewarming. She sounded happy. She's always been better at happiness than me. Better at everything, actually. And I realized something sitting here in Mother's house, unemployed and directionless while my older sister buys her own place. As long as she exists, I'll always be compared to her. I'll always be less. And I don't know how to live with that anymore. I stopped reading. Looked at Thomas. She's been planning this for 7 years? Keep reading, he said quietly. I did. The entries continued, each one more disturbing than the last. 5 years ago, Sophia's company hit $1 million in revenue. Father mentioned it at dinner like it was nothing. Mother changed the subject to my new haircut. They didn't even pretend to care about her success. But I could see it in their eyes. The comparison. The disappointment. I'm the daughter who stayed close, who made myself available, who did everything they asked. And I'm still not enough. What if Sophia just wasn't here? What if she disappeared? Would they finally see me? Would I finally be enough? 4 years ago, I'm not going to kill her. That's insane. That's not who I am. But I think about it sometimes. What my life would be like if she just didn't exist. If there was no comparison. No golden child who escaped and made something of herself while I stayed behind and failed at everything. Maybe I don't need her dead. Maybe I just need her gone. 3 years ago, looked up how to make someone disappear. Today. Not seriously. Just curious. The internet says most missing persons are never found if the first 48 hours pass without leads. Bodies lost at sea are almost never recovered. I'm not planning anything. Just information. Just in case. 2 years ago, found out Sophia's worth $47 million today. $47 million. And she never told us. Never offered to help. Just kept building her empire while I drowned in debt. Mother says Sophia's always been selfish. That she abandoned the family to chase money. And I'm starting to think Mother's right. What kind of sister has millions while her family struggles? What kind of daughter builds wealth and shares none of it? I stopped reading again. My vision was blurring. She's been justifying it. 4 years. Building a narrative where I'm the villain. Keep going, Thomas said. It gets worse. 18 months ago, Mother and I talked about the Sophia problem today. That's what we're calling it now. The Sophia problem. Like she's an equation we need to solve. Mother says that Sophia has poisoned this family with her absence and her judgment. That she's sitting in Seattle looking down on us while we struggle. Mother says every family has a sacrificial lamb. Someone who gives so others can thrive. She says Sophia should have been that person, but she refused. She ran away. And now someone needs to make a hard choice. I think I know what Mother's implying. I think I know what needs to happen. And the scary thing, I'm not horrified. I'm relieved. Like finally someone said out loud what I've been thinking for years. 1 year ago, we're planning it. Actually planning it. Mother says it has to look like an accident. A fall. A drowning. Something that could happen naturally at a family gathering. No one will suspect us. Why would they? We're her family. We love her. Except we don't. I don't think I've ever loved Sophia. I've resented her, envied her, hated her. But love? No. You can't love someone whose existence makes yours meaningless. 6 months ago, Mother suggested we do it on Sophia's birthday. Poetic justice, she said. The day Sophia came into the world, we'll take her out of it. We'll invite her to a party. Make her feel welcome. Maybe even give her something meaningful, something that makes her think we've changed. Then when she's comfortable, when she's let her guard down, we'll do it. Quick and clean. And then we'll grieve. We'll play the devastated family. And we'll inherit everything. 3 months before my birthday, bought the pearls today. Grandmother's necklace. The one Sophia always thought she'd inherit. Mother's idea. We give it to her at the party. Make her think we've finally acknowledged her as the firstborn. Make her feel like she belongs. Then afterward, it becomes proof that we loved her. That we just reconciled. Who would suspect sisters who just made peace? It's brilliant. Mother is brilliant. And I'm learning from her. 2 weeks before, Sophia confirmed she's coming to the party. She doesn't know it's her birthday party. Doesn't know we even remember. Mother didn't mention it in the invitation. Better this way. More tragic. The forgotten daughter who came home one last time. I practiced my grief face in the mirror today. Need to look devastated but not overdramatic. Shocked but not guilty. It's harder than you'd think. 1 week before, final planning session with Mother. Father knows something's going on. He's been asking questions. But Father never actually does anything. He'll suspect and he'll worry and he'll say nothing. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. The man who watches bad things happen and calls it keeping the peace. We can work with that. The night of, it's done. She's gone. I pushed her and she fell and she's gone. I thought I'd feel guilty. I thought I'd feel something. But all I feel is relief. Like a weight I've been carrying for 35 years just lifted. Mother was right. Some problems can only be solved permanently. And now the Sophia problem is solved. I dropped the printout. My hands were numb. Sarah picked it up, started reading where I'd left off. Her face went white. Oh my God. Sophia, she documented everything. The entire conspiracy. The planning. The motive. Her state of mind. This is premeditated murder, Thomas finished. Not attempted murder in the heat of the moment. Not manslaughter. First-degree murder conspiracy spanning multiple years. The prosecution's case just became airtight. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process what I'd just read. My sister had spent 7 years fantasizing about my death. Planning it. Justifying it. Building a narrative where I was the villain and she was the victim who had no choice. There's more, Thomas said quietly. He pulled out another printout. After she thought you were dead. The entries continue. I didn't want to read them, but I had to. 1 week after, Coast Guard called off the search. They're presuming Sophia drowned. Mother cried on the phone with them. Very convincing. I cried too. Easier than I expected. Maybe because part of me did love her once. Before she became everything I wasn't. The lawyer says we can file for presumed death in 12 weeks. Then everything becomes ours. $47 million. The company. The properties. Everything Sophia built while ignoring her family. Finally, it'll be ours. Finally, we'll matter. 3 weeks after, tried to access Sophia's bank accounts today. Denied. She had better security than I expected. Thomas says we have to wait for the death certificate. Frustrating. We solved the Sophia problem and now we have to wait for bureaucracy to catch up. Mother is getting impatient. She wants to start spending. Wants to move into Sophia's Seattle house. I told her we have to be careful. Can't look too eager. Have to play the grieving family for at least a few more months. 6 weeks after, the debt is crushing me. Took out loans against the inheritance. 30% interest, but what choice did I have? Once the probate goes through, I'll pay everything off and still have millions left. Just need to hold on a little longer. Just need the death certificate to be finalized. Sometimes I dream about Sophia. She's in the water, looking up at me, and she's not angry. She's just sad. She says, I would have helped you if you'd asked. But that's not true. She never helped us. She just judged us from her tower in Seattle. The dreams don't mean anything. Just guilt that'll fade with time. 8 weeks after, Father is falling apart. Says we should tell the truth. Says he can't live with what we did. Mother and I had to sit him down and explain reality. If we confess, we all go to prison. If we stay quiet, we inherit millions and move on with our lives. What would Sophia want? She's already gone. Confessing won't bring her back. It'll just destroy what's left of this family. Father agreed to stay silent. But he's weak. Always has been. We'll have to watch him carefully. 10 weeks after, 2 more weeks until the hearing. 2 more weeks until everything becomes official. I can almost taste freedom. Not from guilt. I don't feel guilty. Freedom from being the lesser daughter. From being compared to someone who isn't even here anymore. When people ask about my success, I'll talk about the company I inherited from my tragic sister. I'll be the grieving sibling who turned loss into opportunity, who honored Sophia's legacy by growing her business. It's a good story. People will believe it. Hell, part of me almost believes it. I finished reading. Sat in silence. Sarah was crying. Thomas looked like he wanted to hit something. The jury is going to see this, Thomas said. All of it. Every entry. Every calculation. Every moment of planning and justification and complete lack of remorse. Victoria wrote her own confession. Documented her own guilt. There's no defense against this. What about Mother? I asked. My voice sounded far away. Her entries mention Mother constantly. Mother planned it. Mother suggested the pearls. Mother told her some problems can only be solved permanently. Victoria's journal implicates both of them. Thomas pulled out more papers. And there's this. Text messages we recovered from Victoria's phone. To Mother. The day after they thought you drowned. He handed them to me. Victoria, it's done. She's gone. Are you proud of me now? Mother, very proud. You did what needed to be done. Now we grieve publicly and celebrate privately. Victoria, I can't believe I actually did it. Pushed my own sister into the ocean. Mother, she's not your sister anymore. She's a problem we solved. Don't think of her as family. Think of her as an obstacle we removed. Victoria, what if someone finds out? Mother, no one will find out. It was dark. No witnesses. Her body will never be recovered. And even if by some miracle she survived, who would believe her? The unstable daughter making wild accusations? We have the narrative. We have the sympathy. We have everything. Victoria, I guess you're right. It's just hard not to think about her face when she went over. She looked so surprised. Mother, stop thinking about it. What's done is done. Focus on the future. Our future. The one she would have ruined if she'd lived. I put the papers down. Looked at Thomas. When does the prosecution get this? They already have it. Menendez called me an hour ago. She's adding first-degree murder conspiracy charges. Both defendants. The attempted murder charges stand, but now we're also prosecuting them for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder with premeditation. The journal proves premeditation. The texts prove conspiracy. It's over, Sophia. They're done. I should have felt victorious. Vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. Because reading those entries, I understood something I'd been avoiding. Victoria hadn't been born wanting to kill me. She'd been shaped into someone who could. Our family had created a zero-sum game where only one daughter could matter. And Victoria, desperate to be the one who mattered, had internalized that message so completely that my existence became unbearable to her. Mother had weaponized that desperation. Fed it. Nurtured it. Turned Victoria into a killer by convincing her that my death was the only path to her worth. They destroyed each other, I said quietly. Mother destroyed Victoria by making her believe murder was justified. Victoria destroyed herself by believing it. They destroyed you first, Sarah said fiercely. For 35 years. Don't make them sympathetic now. They documented their own guilt. They planned your murder. They celebrated your death. They tried to steal everything you built. Fuck their tragic backstory. They're monsters. She was right. I knew she was right. But part of me, the part that still remembered being 10 years old and believing my family loved me, mourned for the people we all could have been if we'd been born into a different family. A family that didn't require sacrifice. A family with enough love to go around. The trial is going to be brutal, Thomas said. The defense will try to suppress the journal. They'll claim it's privileged, that it's protected speech, that it's taken out of context. But they'll lose. This is direct evidence of premeditation and conspiracy. The jury is going to hear every word. And when they do, conviction is almost guaranteed. How long? I asked. How long will they go away for? First-degree murder conspiracy can carry the same sentence as murder itself. We're looking at 25 years to life for both of them. Maybe less with plea deals, but Menendez isn't offering deals. She wants to take this to trial. She wants a conviction on all counts. 25 years to life. My mother and sister would spend the rest of their viable lives in prison, and my father would testify against them to save himself. Our family would be completely destroyed, and I'd be the one who destroyed it. No. They destroyed it the moment they decided I was disposable. But here's what that journal revealed that changed everything. This wasn't just about inheritance or money or jealousy. This was about a family so broken that murder seemed like a reasonable solution to the problem of my existence. And that truth was about to come out in court for the whole world to see. The trial started on a Monday morning in October, exactly 8 months after they pushed me off that yacht. I walked into the King County Superior Court wearing a charcoal gray suit, my hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Professional. Composed. Nothing like the woman who'd drowned in Newport Beach. Nothing like the ghost who'd spent 13 weeks gathering evidence. I looked like exactly what I was, a CEO who'd survived attempted murder and come back for justice. The courtroom was packed. Media filled the back rows. Sketch artists positioned themselves for optimal viewing. Court TV had cameras set up for live coverage. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a spectacle. The story of the daughter who refused to stay dead. Sarah sat behind me in the gallery, along with my assistant and several board members from my company. Thomas sat at the prosecution table with Carol Menendez and her team. And at the defense table, separated by their attorneys, sat my mother and my sister. I hadn't seen them in person since the day of their arrest 3 months ago. Victoria looked terrible. She'd lost weight. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, hung limp and unwashed. Prison orange washed out her already pale complexion. She looked like a ghost. Good. Let her feel what it's like to be invisible. Mother looked better. She'd clearly been taking care of herself, even in county jail. Hair neat. Posture perfect. Expression carefully neutral. But I could see tension in her jaw, in the way her hands gripped the edge of the table. She was terrified. She just refused to show it. Judge Margaret Harrison entered, and we all stood. She was in her 60s, former prosecutor, known for running a tight courtroom and having zero tolerance for dramatics. Exactly the judge we wanted. Be seated, she said. We're here for the matter of the state versus Patricia Morgan and Victoria Morgan. Multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted first-degree murder, and fraud. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Both sides confirmed. Very well. Prosecution, your opening statement. Carol Menendez stood. She was dressed in a navy suit, her dark hair pulled back, exuding competence and controlled anger. She walked to the jury box and made eye contact with each juror before speaking. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about family. About trust. About the most fundamental betrayal imaginable. It's about a daughter who spent 35 years trying to earn her family's love. And it's about the moment that family decided she was worth more dead than alive. She paused, letting that sink in. The prosecution will prove that on the night of March 15th, Patricia Morgan and Victoria Morgan pushed Sophia Morgan off a yacht into the Pacific Ocean. We'll prove they planned this murder for months, possibly years. We'll prove they watched her sink beneath the waves and sailed away without calling for help. We'll prove they then attempted to steal her $47 million company by filing for presumed death while she fought to survive. Another pause. And we'll prove all of this using their own words, their own confessions, their own detailed documentation of how they planned and executed what they thought was the perfect murder. Menendez pulled up a photo on the courtroom monitors. Me, soaking wet, bruised, the night Sarah found me on the beach. Several jurors gasped. This is Sophia Morgan, approximately 2 hours after her family tried to kill her. She survived a half-mile swim in the dark. She survived hypothermia and pneumonia. She survived because she refused to give her family the satisfaction of her death. She clicked to another photo. Victoria at a restaurant, laughing, 2 weeks after my disappearance. This is Victoria Morgan 14 days after attempting to murder her sister. Does she look like a woman grieving? Or does she look like a woman who thinks she got away with murder? Menendez clicked through more photos. Victoria trying to access my bank accounts. Mother at my office demanding my files. Father arguing with them outside the restaurant. For 91 days, Sophia Morgan stayed hidden while her family tried to steal everything she'd built. She watched them celebrate her death. She watched them plan their futures with her money. And she documented every moment, every confession, every mistake. Menendez turned to face the defendants. Patricia Morgan told her daughter that Sophia was a problem that needed to be solved permanently. Victoria Morgan kept a journal documenting 7 years of murder fantasies. Together, they planned, executed, and tried to profit from what they believed was the perfect murder. But they made one critical mistake. She looked at me. They underestimated the daughter they'd spent a lifetime dismissing. And that mistake is going to cost them their freedom for the rest of their lives. Menendez sat down. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters had stopped scribbling notes. Victoria's attorney stood for the defense opening. His name was Richard Chin, expensive, experienced, known for getting wealthy clients acquitted. He'd been hired by Mother's family money, the trust fund that had kept them comfortable while I built my business from nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice smooth and sympathetic. You've just heard a compelling story. A story about a victim and villains. A story designed to make you angry. But that's all it is, a story. And like all stories, it has another side. He walked toward the jury box. My clients are not murderers. They're a mother and daughter who are themselves victims. Victims of a family member who abandoned them, who cut them off financially, who disappeared for 3 months and then returned with an elaborate revenge plot designed to destroy them. Several jurors looked skeptical. Good. Think about it. Sophia Morgan claims she was pushed off a yacht. But there were no witnesses. None. She claims she nearly drowned, but she survived a half-mile swim with no assistance. She claims she was afraid for her life, but instead of going to the police, she spent 3 months orchestrating an investigation designed to entrap her family. He paused dramatically. Does that sound like a victim to you? Or does it sound like someone with an agenda? Chin pulled up a different photo. Me at age 16, looking angry and defiant. This is Sophia Morgan as a teenager, already showing signs of oppositional defiant disorder, depression, and paranoid ideation according to her own medical records, which she tried to keep sealed. This is someone with a documented history of mental health issues and family conflict. Objection, Menendez called. Counsel is mischaracterizing psychiatric records and stigmatizing mental illness. Having depression as a teenager doesn't make someone a liar. Sustained, Judge Harrison said. Mr. Chin, stick to facts, not characterizations. Chin nodded, unbothered. The fact is, my clients had a difficult relationship with Sophia. That's not a crime. Many families struggle with estranged adult children. What is a crime is fabricating evidence, manipulating law enforcement, and using the legal system to enact personal revenge. He clicked to a photo of Victoria crying. Victoria Morgan made statements under duress to someone she believed was helping her. Those statements were taken out of context and used against her. Patricia Morgan's private conversations were recorded without her knowledge. And both women were arrested based on an investigation orchestrated by someone who had every reason to want them in prison. The prosecution wants you to believe this is a simple case of attempted murder. But the evidence will show it's actually a case of family dysfunction, mental instability, and a woman who spent 3 months planning how to destroy her mother and sister because she couldn't handle being the less favored child. Several jurors were nodding now. He was good. I'd give him that. Planting reasonable doubt. Making me look vindictive instead of victimized. By the end of this trial, Chin continued, you'll see that what happened on that yacht was a tragic accident, not attempted murder. You'll see that my clients, grieving and confused, made statements that were manipulated and misconstrued. And you'll see that the real villain in this story isn't the mother and sister sitting at this table. It's the daughter who couldn't accept that families sometimes struggle and who decided to destroy everyone rather than work through those struggles. He sat down. The courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. Judge Harrison banged her gavel. Order. Prosecution. Call your first witness. The state calls Sophia Morgan to the stand. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for since the day I crawled out of that ocean. I stood, walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible. The clerk asked if I swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do, I said. My voice was steady. Menendez approached with a kind smile. Ms. Morgan, thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy. It's necessary, I replied. Can you tell the jury about your relationship with your family growing up? I took a breath. Here we go. I was the oldest daughter, the one who was supposed to set an example. Be responsible. Sacrifice when necessary. And I did. For 35 years, I did everything they asked. Can you give the jury some examples? When I was 10, I took the blame for another student's plagiarism so my sister's reputation at the same school wouldn't be affected. When I was 16, I gave up a full scholarship to Stanford so my parents could use that money for my sister's education. When I was 22, I loaned my sister $50,000 for a business that failed. When she couldn't repay me, my father said family doesn't keep score. I paused. But they did keep score. They just made sure I was always in debt, always owing them, always required to give more. And despite all this, you built a successful business? Yes. I moved to Seattle and started a cybersecurity firm. It took 12 years, but I built it into something worth $47 million. Did your family support this success? No. They resented it. My sister told me last Thanksgiving that no one needed me there. My mother told me I'd abandoned the family by moving away. They treated my success like a betrayal. Menendez pulled up the photo of me on the beach again. Ms. Morgan, what happened on the night of March 15th? I looked at the jury, made eye contact with each one. My family tried to kill me. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged her gavel. Order! Order in this court. When the room quieted, Menendez said, please tell the jury exactly what happened. I was on our family yacht for what I thought was a celebration. My sister gave me our grandmother's pearl necklace. Said I deserved it as the firstborn daughter. I thought maybe things were changing. That they finally saw me. My voice cracked slightly. Not performed. Real. Then I overheard my sister talking to my mother. She said the necklace was a perfect gift for someone who wouldn't be around to wear it much longer. That's when I understood it wasn't reconciliation. It was a setup. What happened next? Later that night, I was standing at the yacht's railing. Alone. The party had moved inside. I was thinking about leaving when I felt hands on my back. A hard shove. And then I was falling. I paused. I hit the water. Went under. When I surfaced, the yacht was moving away. Not stopping. Not turning back. Just leaving. And I could hear my mother's laughter fading above me. The courtroom was dead silent. What did you do? I swam. Half a mile to shore in the dark, in a cocktail dress. I thought I was going to die, but I wouldn't let them win. So I swam. Menendez let that sit for a moment. Then, why didn't you go to the police immediately? Because it would have been my word against theirs. No witnesses. No evidence. They would have said I fell while drunk. That I was making accusations because I was bitter. I needed proof. So I stayed hidden. I watched them. And I let them incriminate themselves. And did they? Yes. My sister confessed to Detective Rodriguez. My mother was recorded admitting to planning it. My sister's journal documented 7 years of murder fantasies. They gave me all the proof I needed. Menendez smiled. Thank you, Ms. Morgan. No further questions. Chen stood for cross-examination. This was the part one was dreading. He approached with a shark smile. Ms. Morgan, you testified that you heard your sister talking about you through ventilation. But you didn't confront her, did you? No. You didn't ask what she meant. Didn't give her a chance to explain. You just assumed the worst. I assumed what I heard, which was her saying I wouldn't be around much longer. But that could mean anything. Maybe she thought you were planning to move further away. Maybe. She pushed me off a yacht 30 minutes later, I interrupted. That seems pretty clear. Several jurors smiled. Chen's expression hardened. You claim you were pushed. But there were no witnesses. You can't actually prove someone pushed you, can you? I know what I felt. Hands on my back. A deliberate shove. Or you lost your balance. You'd been drinking, hadn't you? 1 glass of champagne over 3 hours. But you were emotional. Upset about overhearing your sister. Maybe you weren't as steady as you thought. I was pushed, I said firmly, by my sister and my mother who spent months planning to murder me. Chin smiled. Speaking of planning, you spent 3 months orchestrating this investigation, didn't you? 3 months manipulating your family, recording them, setting traps. I spent 3 months gathering evidence of attempted murder. Or you spent 3 months creating evidence, staging scenarios where your family would say things that could be misconstrued as confessions. They confessed, I said, on tape, multiple times, in their own words, words spoken under duress, to people they thought were helping them. Context matters, Ms. Morgan. The context is they tried to kill me, I said. Everything else is just details. Chin tried a few more angles, suggesting I was mentally unstable, implying I'd planned this revenge plot for years, hinting that I'd faked my distress to gain sympathy. But I held firm, answered every question calmly, never lost my composure. After 45 minutes, he gave up. No further questions. I stepped down from the stand. As I walked back to my seat, I made eye contact with Victoria. She was crying, but I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just cold, hard certainty. I told my truth. Now the jury would decide who they believed. But we were just getting started, because next up was my father's testimony. The man who'd heard them planning and said nothing. And what he was about to reveal would destroy what little defense my family had left. The second day of trial opened with the prosecution calling James Morgan to the stand. My father, the man who'd taught me to swim, the man who'd disappeared every time his family did something terrible to me, the man who'd traded his testimony for immunity. He walked to the stand slowly, like he was walking to his own execution. He'd aged 20 years in 8 months. His hair had gone completely gray. His shoulders slumped forward. He looked broken. Good. He should look broken. He'd earned it. After being sworn in, Menendez approached with professional courtesy. No warmth. Just business. Mr. Morgan, please state your relationship to the defendants. Patricia is my wife of 38 years. Victoria is my younger daughter. Sophia is my older daughter. His voice cracked on my name. And what is your relationship to the victim in this case? Sophia is my daughter, he said quietly. The daughter you have an immunity agreement with the prosecution to testify against your wife and other daughter. Is that correct? Yes. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Good. Let them see what kind of man he was. Mr. Morgan, did you know your wife and daughter were planning to harm Sophia? He was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, yes. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged her gavel. Order! When it quieted, Menendez continued. When did you first learn of this plan? About 6 months before Sophia's birthday. I overheard Patricia and Victoria talking in our home office. They thought I was out, but I'd come back early. Victoria said something about how the Sophia problem needed a permanent solution. And Patricia agreed. What did you do with this information? Father's face crumpled. Nothing. I told myself I'd misunderstood. That they couldn't possibly mean what I thought they meant. That my wife and daughter weren't capable of planning to kill my other daughter. But you heard more conversations, didn't you? Yes. Over the next few months, I heard several. They talked about doing it at a family gathering. About making it look like an accident. About filing for presumed death afterward. And each time you heard these conversations, what did you do? Nothing, he whispered. I did nothing. Why not? Menendez's voice was hard now. Unforgiving. Because I'm a coward. Father looked directly at me for the first time. His eyes were red. Because I've spent 38 years keeping the peace in my family by pretending not to see things. By not making waves. By letting Patricia and Victoria hurt Sophia over and over while I looked away and told myself I was being neutral. Tears were streaming down his face now. I wasn't neutral. I was complicit. Every time I stayed silent, I chose them over her. And when I heard they were planning to kill her, I chose them again. I chose my own comfort over my daughter's life. The jury was riveted. Several looked disgusted. Did you try to warn Sophia? No. Did you try to stop your wife and daughter? No. I told myself maybe they wouldn't go through with it. Maybe they were just venting. I made up excuses because facing the truth would have meant choosing sides. And I couldn't do that. I've never been able to do that. Menendez pulled up the audio from the garden. The one where Mother said Sophia was the sacrifice. Is this your voice, Mr. Morgan? The audio played. Father saying maybe they should tell the truth. Mother saying Sophia tried to destroy the family and they stopped her. Yes, that's my voice. And this conversation took place after Sophia's disappearance? Yes. About a week after. I was starting to feel guilty. Starting to realize what we'd done. But Patricia convinced me that coming forward would destroy what was left of the family. And I believed her. Because I wanted to believe her. What happened the night of March 15th? The night of the attempt on Sophia's life. I positioned myself as far from Sophia as possible. I always did that when something bad was about to happen. I didn't want to see it. Didn't want to know the exact moment. If I wasn't there, I could pretend it hadn't happened. His voice was hollow now. Dead. I saw Patricia and Victoria follow Sophia to the railing. I saw them standing close to her. And then I went inside. I didn't watch. Couldn't watch. But I knew what was happening. And when Sophia went overboard, no one said anything. The party continued. About 20 minutes later, Patricia came inside and announced that Sophia must have gotten tired and called a car home. Everyone accepted that. Why wouldn't they? And we kept sailing. Did you ask your wife what happened? No. I knew. And I said nothing. I went home that night and I drank until I couldn't think anymore. And the next morning, Patricia told me Sophia was gone. That she'd fallen overboard. That we couldn't say anything because it would look like we'd pushed her. And you agreed to stay silent? Yes. Because the alternative was admitting I'd let my daughter be murdered. And I couldn't face that. So I became part of the cover-up. Menendez let that statement hang in the air. Then, did you believe Sophia was dead? Yes. The Coast Guard searched for days. I convinced myself she couldn't have survived. That it was over. That I just had to live with what I'd allowed to happen. How did you feel when you learned she was alive? Father looked at me again. Relieved. Terrified. Ashamed. All of it at once. Because I knew what was coming. I knew she'd make us answer for what we'd done. And I knew I deserved everything that was about to happen to me. Mr. Morgan, in your own words, did your wife and daughter plan to murder Sophia? Yes. Did they execute that plan? Yes. And did you allow it to happen by staying silent? Yes. His voice broke completely. I let them kill my daughter because I was too weak to stop them. And I will never forgive myself for that. Menendez returned to her table. Your witness. Victoria's attorney, Chen, stood slowly. This was going to be interesting. How do you cross-examine a man who just confessed to being complicit in attempted murder? Mr. Morgan, you have an immunity agreement, correct? Yes. Meaning you don't face any charges for your role in this alleged crime? That's correct. And in exchange for this immunity, you agreed to testify against your wife and daughter? Yes. Isn't it true that you have financial motivation to testify this way? That if your wife is convicted, you retain assets that would otherwise be divided? Father looked confused. I don't care about the money. Really? Because you've been married for 38 years. Community property laws mean you'd lose a significant portion of marital assets if your wife is incarcerated. But if you testify against her, you keep everything. I'm testifying because it's the truth, Father said. I'm testifying because I should have told the truth 8 months ago and I didn't. Chin pressed harder. Isn't it convenient that your testimony gives you immunity, protects your assets, and allows you to maintain a relationship with your surviving daughter? I don't have a relationship with Sophia, Father said quietly. I destroyed that decades ago. I'm not testifying to get her back. I'm testifying because I owe her the truth. It's the only thing I have left to give her. Chin tried several more angles, suggesting Father misunderstood conversations, implying his memory was faulty, hinting that his guilt made him interpret innocent statements as sinister. But Father held firm. I know what I heard. I know what I allowed. And I know that my cowardice almost cost my daughter her life. Those aren't interpretations. Those are facts. After 30 minutes, Chin gave up. Father stepped down from the stand. As he passed the defense table, Victoria reached for him. Daddy, please. He didn't stop. Didn't look at her. Just kept walking. I watched this man who'd been my father walk out of the courtroom, and I felt nothing. Not forgiveness. Not anger. Just the cold recognition that some betrayals are so fundamental they erase what came before. The father who taught me to swim had drowned in his own cowardice years ago. This was just his ghost, finally telling the truth. The prosecution spent the next 2 days building their case. Detective Rodriguez testified about the investigation. Marcus presented surveillance footage showing Victoria's increasing desperation. Financial experts explained Victoria's debts and attempted access to my accounts. The Coast Guard testified about the search and recovery operation. Each witness added another brick to the wall of evidence surrounding my family. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Elena Reyes, Victoria's college friend, took the stand. Menendez approached gently. Elena was clearly nervous, hands shaking as she was sworn in. "Ms. Reyes, how do you know Victoria Morgan?" "We were roommates in college. Best friends for almost 15 years. "And did Victoria ever discuss her relationship with her sister Sophia?" "Yes. All the time. She was obsessed with Sophia. Everything was about how Sophia was better, smarter, more successful. How their parents compared them. How she'd never be good enough as long as Sophia existed." "Did she ever say anything that concerned you?" Elena's voice dropped. "About 2 years ago, we were having drinks, and Victoria said, 'Sometimes I wish Sophia would just disappear.' Like, actually disappear. Then maybe Mother would finally see me." "How did you respond?" "I laughed it off. Thought she was venting. Siblings say things like that when they're frustrated, right? I didn't think she meant it literally." "Did she say anything else?" Elena pulled out her phone. "She sent me texts. A lot of texts over the years. I brought them." Menendez pulled up the texts on the courtroom monitors. The jury read in silence. Victoria to Elena, 18 months before. "What if I told you I was planning something big? Something that would change everything?" Elena, "Like what?" Victoria, "Can't say yet. But let's just say the Sophia problem might solve itself soon. 3 months before, Mother and I are planning something for Sophia's birthday. A surprise. She'll never see it coming. 1 week before, after this weekend, everything changes. Promise me you'll remember I wasn't always like this. That I tried to be good. The day after my disappearance. It's done. She's gone. I can't believe I actually did it." Elena reading these on the stand. "I didn't understand what she meant until I saw the news. Until I saw that Sophia was missing and Victoria was claiming it was an accident. That's when I went back through our messages and realized what she'd been telling me all along." "What did you do?" "I called a lawyer. I couldn't stay silent. Victoria had confessed to me. Maybe not directly, but enough that I knew. And I couldn't protect someone who'd killed her sister, even if that sister turned out to be alive." "Did Victoria ever express remorse?" Elena shook her head. "No. Even after, when she thought Sophia was dead, she seemed relieved. Like a weight had been lifted. She talked about finally being the only daughter. Finally mattering. Never once did she say she felt guilty or wished she could take it back." Chen's cross-examination tried to paint Elena as a clout chaser, someone using her friend's tragedy for attention. But Elena held firm. "I loved Victoria. She was my best friend. But I love the truth more. And the truth is she told me she was going to do something to Sophia. And then Sophia disappeared. And Victoria celebrated. Those are facts." When Elena stepped down, several jurors were crying. The human element of the case was devastating. A best friend forced to testify against someone she'd loved. A father admitting his cowardice. A sister documenting her own murder plot. This wasn't just a crime. It was a family destroyed from the inside out. Day 5 brought Victoria's journal into evidence. The entire thing. Menendez read selected entries aloud to the jury. Every word about wanting me gone. Every fantasy about my death. Every justification for why murder was necessary. Victoria sat at the defense table sobbing as her own words condemned her. Chen objected repeatedly. "Your Honor, this is prejudicial. This is my client's private thoughts, never meant to be public." "It's evidence of premeditation and intent," Menendez countered. "She documented her plan to kill her sister. That's directly relevant." Judge Harrison allowed it. All of it. By the time Menendez finished reading, the jury looked sick. Several were openly glaring at Victoria. But it was the final journal entry that sealed her fate. Written the night before she was arrested, after she'd confessed to Rodriguez, but before she knew I was alive. I did what I had to do. Sophia forced this. She had everything and refused to share it. She abandoned her family and expected us to just accept it. Well, we didn't accept it. We solved the problem. And now we're going to benefit from solving it. That's not murder. That's justice. That's survival. And I refuse to feel guilty for surviving. Menendez looked at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the defendant's own definition of justice. Murder equals survival. And she refuses to feel guilty. Those are her words. Her admission. Her confession. She sat down. The courtroom was silent except for Victoria's crying. Mother sat stone-faced beside her daughter, but I saw her hands trembling. She knew. They both knew. The evidence was overwhelming. The confessions were damning. And the jury was watching them with a kind of cold assessment that ends in conviction. And we were only halfway through the trial. Because next up was the defense's case. And they were about to make a mistake that would guarantee their clients spent the rest of their lives in prison. They were going to put Victoria on the stand. Day 6 of the trial. The courtroom was packed tighter than usual. Word had leaked that the defense was putting Victoria on the stand, and everyone wanted to see it. Reporters, true crime podcasters, law students, even other attorneys came to watch what most legal experts were calling a catastrophic mistake. Thomas leaned over and whispered, "Chen's desperate. He knows the evidence is destroying them. He's gambling that Victoria can humanize herself, make the jury see her as sympathetic instead of monstrous." "Will it work?" I asked. "Not a chance. But watching him try will be entertaining." Judge Harrison called the court to order. Chin stood. The defense calls Victoria Morgan to the stand. Victoria stood slowly. She'd clearly been coached on her appearance. Hair washed and styled as much as possible given the circumstances. A conservative blue dress instead of prison orange. Minimal makeup designed to make her look vulnerable and young. She walked to the stand with her head down, projecting remorse. Performed remorse. After being sworn in, she sat with her hands folded in her lap, the picture of a broken woman. Chin approached with paternal warmth. "Victoria, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell the jury in your own words what happened on March 15th. Victoria took a shaky breath, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "It was an accident. A terrible, horrible accident that I've regretted every single day since it happened." "Tell us about that night." "We were having a party on the yacht. A family celebration. Sophia was there, which was unusual because she distanced herself from us for years. But she came, and I thought maybe we could reconnect." Her voice was soft, trembling. "I gave her our grandmother's necklace. A peace offering. I genuinely wanted to make things better between us." "And what happened later?" "We argued. About money. Sophia said she was cutting us off financially, that we needed to learn to take care of ourselves. It hurt. She's my sister. We needed her help, and she was refusing us. I got emotional. Angry." Victoria looked at the jury. I followed her to the railing. I wanted to keep talking, to make her understand. But she turned away from me, dismissive, and I don't know. I reached out to grab her arm, to make her listen to me, and she lost her balance. "So you didn't push her?" "No." I grabbed at her and she stumbled and went over the railing. It happened so fast. 1 second she was there, the next she was falling. I screamed. I froze. I didn't know what to do. "Why didn't you call for help immediately?" "Because I panicked. Because I knew how it would look. We'd been arguing about money. My hand had been on her. Everyone would think I pushed her. Mother said we couldn't call for help because it would look like murder. We thought we'd go back, search for her, but by the time we got there, she was gone." The tears were flowing freely now. I thought she was dead. I thought I'd killed my sister, and I didn't know how to live with that. Chin nodded sympathetically. Victoria, the prosecution has presented journal entries where you wrote about wanting Sophia gone. Can you explain those? They were fantasies. Venting. Things I wrote when I was angry or drunk or feeling worthless. Haven't you ever written things you didn't mean? Things you'd never actually do? That's all those entries were. Therapy. Not plans. And the texts to your friend Elena? Taken out of context. When I said, it's done, she's gone, I meant the argument was over and she'd left. I didn't mean I'd killed her. Elena misunderstood. What about your confession to Detective Rodriguez? Victoria's face hardened slightly. I was manipulated. That woman approached me pretending to help, said there was a witness who'd seen something, and I panicked. I said things I thought she wanted to hear to make the problem go away. But those weren't real confessions. They were coerced statements from someone who was terrified and confused. Chin walked back to his table. Victoria, do you love your sister? Yes, Victoria whispered. I've always loved Sophia. Even when she hurt me by leaving, by succeeding without us, by making me feel small. I loved her. I still love her. And I'm so sorry for what happened. She looked at me directly. Sophia, I never meant to hurt you. It was an accident. Please believe me. I stared back at her with zero expression. Let her see nothing. Chin finished. No further questions. Now it was Menendez's turn. She stood slowly, gathering papers, letting the tension build. When she approached Victoria, her expression was cold steel. Ms. Morgan, you just testified that grabbing your sister caused her to lose her balance and fall overboard. Is that correct? Yes. How hard did you grab her? I don't know. Not hard. I was just trying to get her attention. But hard enough to make her go over a railing? A railing that was 4 feet high. That's quite a loss of balance from a simple grab. Victoria hesitated. It happened fast. She must have been off balance already. Or you pushed her. With both hands. Deliberately. The way you wrote about in your journal for years. No. It was an accident. Menendez pulled up a journal entry on the screen. Let me read something you wrote 6 months before your sister's birthday. I'm not going to kill her. I'm going to make it so when she's gone, they don't even miss her. Does that sound like someone planning an accident? I was venting. I didn't mean it literally. Really? Let's look at another entry. Mother and I talked about the Sophia problem today. She says it has to look like an accident. We'll do it at a party when everyone's had wine. That sounds pretty specific for venting. Victoria's composure was cracking. You're taking things out of context. Am I? Let me read one more. Written 3 weeks before March 15th. We give her the necklace. Make her think we've reconciled. Then when she's comfortable, we do it. Quick and clean. Tell me, Ms. Morgan, what does we do it mean if not murder? I don't know. I was confused. I was writing fantasies. Fantasies that you then executed exactly as written. You gave her the necklace. You made her think you'd reconciled. And then you pushed her off the yacht. Quick and clean. Exactly as planned. It wasn't like that. Victoria was shouting now. You don't understand what it's like to live in someone's shadow. To never be enough. To watch your sister succeed while you fail at everything. You don't know what that does to a person. Menendez pounced. So you did resent her. You did want her gone. Yes. Okay, yes. I resented her. Is that what you want to hear? I resented her success and her money and the way she made me feel worthless just by existing. But that doesn't mean I plan to kill her. But you wrote for years about wanting her gone. You called her the Sophia problem that needed a permanent solution. You conspired with your mother to make her death look like an accident. And then on March 15th, you pushed her off a yacht and sailed away without calling for help. That's not resentment. That's murder. I grabbed her. She lost her balance. Victoria was fully crying now, makeup running down her face. Why won't anyone believe me? Because you documented your plan to kill her. Because you confessed to killing her. Because you celebrated when you thought she was dead. And because you're lying right now. Menendez pulled up another journal entry. The one written the night before the arrest. You wrote, "I did what I had to do." That's not murder. That's justice. That's survival. Those are your words, Ms. Morgan. You admit doing it. You just don't want to call it murder. Victoria had no answer. She just sat there crying, looking at the jury for sympathy. But the jury's faces were cold. Menendez continued. Let's talk about what happened after Sophia went overboard. You testified you froze, that you didn't know what to do. But that's not true, is it? I was in shock. You were in shock, but you had the presence of mind to tell everyone Sophia had left early? You were in shock, but you conspired with your mother to not call the Coast Guard for 24 hours? You were in shock, but 3 days later you tried to access Sophia's bank accounts. Victoria had no good answer. I needed money. My debts, your debts that you plan to pay off with your dead sister's inheritance. You're twisting everything. I'm reading your own words, Ms. Morgan. You documented everything. Your resentment, your plans, your execution of those plans, and your complete lack of remorse afterward. Menendez walked to her table and picked up Victoria's phone records. Let's talk about the text you sent your mother the day after Sophia disappeared. It's done. She's gone. Are you proud of me now? Does that sound like someone who accidentally caused their sister's death? Victoria was silent. Your mother responded, very proud. You did what needed to be done. Now we grieve publicly and celebrate privately. Explain that exchange. We were talking about something else. That text was about what? What else would it's done? She's gone possibly refer to. I don't remember. It was 8 months ago. You don't remember texting your mother about killing your sister the day after you killed your sister? That's convenient. Menendez pulled up more texts. An entire chain between Victoria and mother over the 3 months I was missing. Each one more damning than the last. Victoria celebrating. Mother coaching her on what to say. Both of them planning how to access my assets. Victoria discussing debt repayment once the inheritance came through. These are not the texts of someone grieving an accident, Menendez said. These are the texts of someone who committed murder and thinks they got away with it. Victoria tried to explain each text, each phone call, each journal entry. But with every explanation, she dug herself deeper. She contradicted earlier statements. She changed details. She got defensive and angry, showing the jury exactly who she really was. After 90 minutes of cross-examination, Menendez said, "One final question, Ms. Morgan. You wrote in your journal that as long as Sophia existed, you'd always be less. Do you still believe that?" Victoria looked at me. Real hatred flashed in her eyes before she could hide it. Yes. No. She always made me feel less. Everything she did made me feel worthless. Even now, she's making me look like a monster when all I wanted was to matter to my own family. So you killed her to matter? I didn't kill her. It was an accident. But the jury had seen that flash of hatred. They'd heard her admit that my existence made her feel worthless. They'd watched her contradict herself and cry and rage and blame everyone but herself. Chin tried to rehabilitate her on redirect. Asked softball questions about her childhood, about feeling invisible, about the pressure of being compared to a successful sibling. Victoria gave rehearsed answers about family dysfunction and mental health struggles. But it was too late. The damage was done. When Victoria finally stepped down, she looked destroyed. And she should. Because she just spent 2 hours proving every single thing the prosecution had said about her. That night, legal commentators universally agreed, putting Victoria on the stand had been a disaster. She'd confirmed motive, admitted resentment, and shown the jury her capacity for hatred. Even her own attorney looked devastated. But the prosecution wasn't done. Because the next day, they were calling their final witness. The person who'd planned it all. The person who'd turned resentment into murder. The person who, even now, showed zero remorse. My mother was about to take the stand. And unlike Victoria, Mother didn't crack under pressure. She doubled down. Mother's attorney, a woman named Diane Bradford, had advised against testifying. I'd heard through Thomas that she'd begged Mother to stay silent, to let the prosecution's case stand without adding to it. But Mother refused. Patricia Morgan had spent 63 years controlling every narrative. She wasn't about to let prosecutors define her story. When they called her name, Mother stood with perfect posture, walked to the stand like she was walking into a board meeting, and took the oath with steady hands. No tears. No performance of remorse. Just cold control. Bradford approached carefully. Mrs. Morgan, can you describe your relationship with your daughter Sophia? Complicated, Mother said. Her voice was level, unemotional. Sophia was a difficult child. Rebellious. Resentful of her sister. Always feeling slighted even when she wasn't. Did you love her? Of course. But love doesn't mean accepting destructive behavior. Sophia chose to distance herself from this family. She chose to build a life that excluded us. That was her choice. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Mother wasn't trying to be sympathetic. She was justifying. Bradford tried again. Did you plan to harm Sophia? No. What happened that night was a terrible accident that Victoria has been unfairly blamed for. Can you explain the recordings where you discuss the Sophia problem and talk about permanent solutions? Taken out of context. I was discussing Sophia's refusal to help her family financially. The permanent solution I referenced was cutting ties with her completely if she wouldn't support us. Not murder. That's absurd. And the text messages where you congratulated Victoria after Sophia disappeared? My daughter was distraught. I was trying to comfort her, telling her it wasn't her fault, that we'd get through it together. Mother looked at the jury. I've been a mother for 36 years. I've made mistakes, but I did not plan to kill my daughter, and I resent the implication that I did. Bradford sat down. Menendez stood, and I saw something in Mother's eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Menendez didn't approach slowly or carefully. She walked straight to Mother like a predator approaching prey. Mrs. Morgan, you testified that Sophia was a difficult child. Can you give examples? She was willful, didn't accept authority, always questioning decisions. Is that why you made her take the blame for plagiarism at age 10? Because she was difficult. Mother's expression flickered. That was a complicated situation. Was it complicated? Or was it convenient to sacrifice your older daughter to protect your younger daughter's reputation? It was the best decision for the family as a whole. The family as a whole, meaning Sophia's well-being was less important than Victoria's. Sophia was more resilient. She could handle it. She was 10 years old. You made a 10-year-old take the blame for cheating she didn't do. That's not resilience. That's abuse. Objection. Bradford stood. Counsel is arguing, not questioning. Sustained. Ms. Menendez, please ask questions. Menendez nodded. Mrs. Morgan, when Sophia was 16, did you convince her to decline a Stanford scholarship? We needed family resources allocated differently. Sophia understood. Did she understand? Or did you manipulate a 16-year-old into giving up her future so you could fund Victoria's education with that money? Victoria needed more support. Sophia was always more independent. You keep saying Sophia was independent. But isn't the truth that you forced her to be independent because you refused to support her? Mother's mask was slipping. I supported both my daughters equally. Did you? Because the evidence shows you supported Victoria financially for decades while Sophia built her business with zero help from you. You loaned Victoria money that was never repaid. You paid for her failed businesses. You funded her lifestyle. What did you give Sophia? She didn't need our help. Or you didn't offer it because you'd already decided Victoria was the daughter who mattered. Mother's jaw tightened. That's not true, isn't it? Let me read something you said to your husband. Menendez played the garden recording. Mother's voice saying Sophia tried to destroy the family and they stopped her. Saying she should have believed they'd actually do it. Saying she never understood she was the sacrifice. The courtroom went silent. And in that silence, I watched my mother realize she'd been caught in her own words. Words that would destroy her defense and guarantee she spent the rest of her life in prison. Because there's no explaining away, she was the sacrifice. There's no context that makes that statement innocent. And the jury knew it. Mother's face went white as her own voice filled the courtroom. She should have believed we'd actually do it. I told her every family needs someone willing to sacrifice. She just never understood she was the sacrifice. The recording ended. Silence. Menendez let it hang there for a long moment. Then she turned to Mother. Mrs. Morgan, you just testified that you never planned to harm Sophia. But we just heard you admit that Sophia was meant to be sacrificed. Explain that. Mother's composure was fracturing. I was speaking metaphorically. About family dynamics. About how Sophia always refused to put family first. Metaphorically. Your daughter went into the ocean that same week. Your other daughter pushed her. And you're saying when you called Sophia the sacrifice, you meant it metaphorically. Yes. I meant she should have sacrificed her selfishness for the family good. Not that she should die. But she almost did die. Funny coincidence. I didn't know Victoria would. Mother stopped. Realized her mistake too late. Didn't know Victoria would what? Menendez pounced. Push her. So you admit Victoria pushed her. That's not what I said. You just said you didn't know Victoria would do something. What was that something, if not push Sophia overboard? Mother was silent. Trapped. Let me help you out, Menendez said. You didn't know Victoria would actually go through with the plan. The plan you'd spent months discussing. The plan to make Sophia's death look like an accident. That's what you meant, isn't it? No. Then explain the text you sent Victoria the day after Sophia disappeared. The one where you said, you did what needed to be done. What needed to be done, Mrs. Morgan? I was comforting my daughter. She was upset about the accident. The accident you celebrated privately while grieving publicly? Those were your words. Grieve publicly, celebrate privately. What were you celebrating if your daughter had just accidentally died? Mother had no answer. Menendez pulled up more evidence. The financial records showing Mother trying to access my assets. The emails to attorneys asking about expediting probate. The text chain with Victoria discussing how to split my company's assets. Every piece of evidence showed a woman who wasn't grieving. A woman who was planning her financial future based on her daughter's death. Mrs. Morgan, you've spent this entire testimony trying to convince the jury you're a loving mother who suffered a tragic loss. But the evidence shows something very different. It shows a woman who spent years pitting her daughters against each other. Who told one daughter she was the sacrifice. Who helped plan that daughter's murder. And who then tried to profit from it. Menendez walked back to her table. I have no further questions. I think the jury has heard enough. Mother stepped down. She tried to maintain composure, but her hands were shaking. As she passed the prosecution table, she looked at me. I looked back. And for the first time in my life, I saw my mother clearly. Not as a mother. As a woman who'd built her identity on control and manipulation, and who destroyed her own family to maintain it. The defense rested. No more witnesses. No more evidence. They'd gambled on Victoria and Mother humanizing themselves, and both had instead proven exactly what the prosecution claimed. Closing arguments began the next morning. Menendez stood before the jury with confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 8 days, you've heard overwhelming evidence of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted first-degree murder. You've heard the defendants' own words documenting their plans. You've heard confessions. You've seen journal entries spanning 7 years of murder fantasies. You've watched both defendants testify and contradict themselves repeatedly. She pulled up Victoria's journal on the screen one final time. Victoria Morgan spent 7 years fantasizing about her sister's death. She documented her resentment, her rage, her belief that Sophia's existence made hers meaningless. She conspired with her mother to plan Sophia's murder. She gave Sophia a necklace specifically to create a false narrative of reconciliation. And on March 15th, she pushed Sophia Morgan off a yacht and watched her sink into the Pacific Ocean. Menendez paused. Then she sailed away. She didn't call for help. She didn't try to save her sister. She went home and texted her mother, "It's done. She's gone. Are you proud of me now? Does that sound like an accident?" She turned to face Mother. Patricia Morgan spent decades teaching her daughters that only one of them could matter. She created a zero-sum game where Victoria's worth depended on Sophia's elimination. She told Sophia she was the family sacrifice. She planned the murder with Victoria. She coached her through it. And when it was done, she told Victoria to grieve publicly and celebrate privately. These are not the actions of innocent people. These are not the actions of a loving family. These are the calculated actions of 2 people who decided murder was an acceptable solution to their problems. Menendez walked along the jury box, making eye contact with each juror. The defense wants you to believe this was an accident. That all the planning was just venting. That all the confessions were taken out of context. That 7 years of documented intent means nothing. But you've heard the evidence. You've heard the defendant's own words. You know the truth. She stopped in front of Victoria and Mother. These women tried to kill Sophia Morgan. They planned it. They executed it. And they tried to steal everything she'd built. The only reason Sophia is alive today is because she refused to let them win. She survived. She gathered evidence. And she brought them to justice. Menendez returned to the jury. Now it's your turn. You have the power to hold these defendants accountable. To say that in this country, you don't get to murder your family members for inheritance. To say that planning and executing an attempt on someone's life has consequences. To say that Sophia Morgan matters. That her life matters. That justice matters. She sat down. We ask that you find both defendants guilty on all counts. The defense's closing was desperate. Chen and Bradford tag-teamed, each trying to salvage their client. Chen went first. Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution has painted a vivid picture of calculated murderers. But that's not who my client is. Victoria Morgan is a woman who struggled her entire life with mental health issues, with feeling inadequate, with family dysfunction. Yes, she wrote disturbing things in her journal. Yes, she said things she shouldn't have. But writing dark thoughts isn't murder. Saying things in anger isn't murder. The prosecution wants you to believe that every word in that journal was a literal plan. But we all have dark thoughts. We all vent. We all say things we don't mean when we're angry or hurt or feeling worthless. Victoria's journal was therapy. It was her way of processing feelings she didn't know how to handle. It wasn't a blueprint for murder. He pulled up a photo of young Victoria and me. These are sisters. They grew up together. They loved each other. Yes, they had problems. Yes, there was resentment. But that doesn't make Victoria a murderer. It makes her human. What happened on that yacht was a tragedy. An accident born of an argument that got physical. Victoria reached for Sophia. Sophia lost her balance. And in the panic of the moment, Victoria made terrible decisions. She didn't call for help immediately. She listened to her mother's bad advice. She said things afterward that sound incriminating. But bad decisions in the aftermath of an accident don't make you a murderer. The prosecution wants you to convict based on journal entries and text messages. But those are just words. You have no physical evidence that Victoria pushed Sophia. No witnesses. Just the word of a woman who disappeared for 3 months orchestrating a revenge plot against her family. Chen was reaching. The jury's faces showed it. Victoria made mistakes. She wrote things she shouldn't have. She said things she regrets. But she didn't commit murder. She didn't plan murder. She was involved in an accident that she's been unfairly blamed for. And I'm asking you to see that. To see her as a flawed human being who deserves mercy, not a monster who deserves prison. He sat down. Bradford stood for Mother's defense. Ladies and gentlemen, my client has been portrayed as a manipulative matriarch who orchestrated her daughter's murder. But Patricia Morgan is a mother who loved both her daughters and tried to hold together a fractured family. Yes, she said things in private that sound bad. But families say things to each other that sound terrible out of context. She played the sympathy card. Patricia raised 2 daughters. She tried to balance their needs, their demands, their constant rivalry. Was she perfect? No. Did she make mistakes? Absolutely. But making parenting mistakes doesn't make you a murderer. The prosecution wants you to believe that Patricia planned Sophia's death. But there's no direct evidence of that. The recordings are ambiguous. The texts can be interpreted multiple ways. Patricia's statement about Sophia being the sacrifice was metaphorical, referring to Sophia's refusal to support her family financially. Not literal murder. Bradford paced. What you have here is a mother who was trying to comfort her daughter after a tragic accident, who was trying to protect Victoria from unfair accusations, who made poor choices in the aftermath, yes, but who didn't plan or execute a murder. Patricia Morgan deserves better than to be convicted based on ambiguous statements and prosecutorial overreach. She deserves the presumption of innocence. She deserves to be judged on actual evidence, not on how her words can be twisted to fit a narrative. Bradford sat down. Both defense attorneys had done their best. But it wasn't enough. You could see it in the jury's faces. Judge Harrison instructed the jury. You've heard the evidence. You must determine beyond a reasonable doubt whether the defendants conspired to commit murder and attempted to carry out that murder. You must evaluate the credibility of witnesses, the weight of evidence, and apply the law as I've instructed. The jury filed out. The wait began. Thomas leaned over. How long do you think? Not long, I said. The evidence is overwhelming. They'll want to take time to show they deliberated carefully, but the outcome isn't in doubt. I was right. 4 hours later, the jury sent word they'd reached a verdict. We reconvened. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, cameras, everyone who'd followed this case wanting to be there for the conclusion. Judge Harrison addressed the jury foreman. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder against defendant Victoria Morgan, how do you find? Guilty. Victoria's face crumpled. She started crying. On the charge of attempted first-degree murder against defendant Victoria Morgan, how do you find? Guilty. Victoria was sobbing now. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder, but she shook it off. On the charge of fraud against defendant Victoria Morgan, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder against defendant Patricia Morgan, how do you find? Guilty. Mother's expression didn't change, just a slight tightening around her eyes. On the charge of attempted first-degree murder against defendant Patricia Morgan, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of fraud against defendant Patricia Morgan, how do you find? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Judge Harrison banged her gavel. Order! Order in this court. When it quieted, she dismissed the jury with thanks and set sentencing for 3 weeks later. As they led Victoria and Mother away in handcuffs, Victoria turned and screamed at me. "This is your fault. You destroyed this family. You destroyed us." I stared back at her, said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. Mother didn't look at me, just kept her head high as they escorted her out, playing the dignified victim until the very end. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Ms. Morgan, how do you feel about the verdict?" "Ms. Morgan, what do you want to say to your family?" "Ms. Morgan, do you think justice was served?" I stopped, looked at the cameras. Justice was served. My family tried to kill me for money. They planned it for months. They executed that plan. And they tried to steal everything I built. The jury saw the truth. And now they'll face the consequences of their actions. "Do you feel vindicated?" a reporter asked. "I feel free," I said. "For the first time in my life, I'm free from a family that told me I didn't matter. That told me my worth was measured by what I could sacrifice for them. That tried to erase me when I refused to be erased. What's next for you?" "I'm going back to my life. My business. My real family, the people who chose to stand by me. And I'm going to help other people who've survived family betrayal. Because no one should have to go through what I went through." I walked to the car where Sarah was waiting, got in, and as we drove away from the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. 3 weeks later, sentencing day arrived. Victoria and Mother were brought into court for the final time. Judge Harrison had reviewed the pre-sentencing reports, the victim impact statements, everything. She looked at Victoria first. "Ms. Victoria Morgan, you've been convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted first-degree murder, and fraud. These are serious crimes that demonstrate a level of premeditation and callousness that this court finds deeply disturbing. Your journal entries show years of planning. Your actions show a complete disregard for your sister's life. And your testimony showed zero genuine remorse." Judge Harrison paused. "The court sentences you to 25 years in state prison on the attempted murder charge, to run consecutively with 15 years for conspiracy and 5 years for fraud. Total sentence, 45 years. With credit for time served and possibility of parole after serving 85% of your sentence." Victoria collapsed, started screaming. "No, no, please. I'm sorry. Sophia, please, tell them you forgive me. Please." I sat silent, unmoved. Judge Harrison turned to Mother. "Mrs. Patricia Morgan, you are convicted of the same charges. But your role is even more disturbing. You are the mother who created the conditions that led to this crime. You pitted your daughters against each other. You taught one that she was worthless and the other that she was disposable. You planned your daughter's murder and coached your other daughter through it. You showed no remorse. Even on the stand, you justified your actions. The court sentences you to 25 years for attempted murder, 15 years for conspiracy, and 5 years for fraud. Total sentence, 45 years. Given your age and health, this is effectively a life sentence." Mother finally showed emotion. Her face went pale. Her hands gripped the table. But she didn't cry, didn't beg, just stared straight ahead as the reality sank in. "Do the defendants have anything to say before this court is adjourned?" Victoria's attorney shook his head. She was too hysterical to speak. Mother stood slowly, looked at me. "Sophia, I hope you're happy. You destroyed this family. You took a tragic accident and turned it into a vendetta. You put your own mother and sister in prison for the rest of their lives. I hope that gives you peace. I stood too, faced her. You destroyed this family 35 years ago when you decided only one daughter could matter. You destroyed it when you taught Victoria that my existence made hers meaningless. You destroyed it when you planned my murder. I didn't destroy anything. I just survived what you tried to do to me, and I made sure you faced consequences. That's not vengeance. That's justice. Mother opened her mouth to respond. Judge Harrison cut her off. That's enough. Officers, please escort the defendants to begin serving their sentences. As they led Mother away, she looked back one last time. Still defiant. Still believing she was the victim. Victoria was still crying, still begging. Their voices faded as they disappeared through the door that led to the rest of their lives behind bars. And just like that, it was over. The trial. The investigation. The months of fear and planning and fighting. My family was gone. Locked away. And I was still standing. Still here. Still alive. They tried to drown me. Instead, I'd learned to swim. And then I taught them that some daughters refused to stay submerged. 1 year later, I stood on the same dock where Sarah had found me that night. The same place I'd crawled out of the ocean, half dead, soaked, and broken. The same place where my family thought they'd erased me forever. But this time, I wasn't alone. 12 women stood around me. Clients from my consulting firm who'd survived their own betrayals. Corporate sabotage. Hostile takeovers. Workplace abuse. Financial manipulation by family members. Each one had a story. Each one had survived. And each one was here because I'd helped protect their businesses after they'd lost everything else. We were launching the Morgan Foundation for Survivors, a nonprofit providing cybersecurity services, legal support, and business mentorship for abuse survivors rebuilding their lives after family betrayal. Using my real name. Not hiding it. Not running from it. Reclaiming it. Sarah stood beside me as the Foundation's chief operating officer. The woman who'd risked everything to save me was now my partner in saving others. She handed me ceremonial scissors for the ribbon cutting. You ready for this? I looked at the water. Not with fear anymore. With recognition. This was where I died. Where the old Sophia Morgan, the invisible daughter, the family scapegoat, had drowned. This was where I'd been reborn. Where I'd decided that surviving wasn't enough. Where I'd decided to fight back. I'm ready, I said. We cut the ribbon together. Photographers snapped pictures. Local news crews filmed. Tomorrow's headlines would read exactly what I wanted them to read. Tech CEO launches foundation after surviving family murder attempt. I'd approved the language myself. No hiding. No shame. No minimizing what had happened. Just the truth, bold and public. Somewhere 300 miles south in a maximum security women's prison, Victoria would read that article. She'd see my photo, strong and smiling, surrounded by people who chose me. People who valued me. People who saw my worth without needing to diminish theirs. She had 17 years and 8 months left before her first parole hearing. 17 years to think about what she'd done, what she'd become, what she'd destroyed trying to matter to people who'd never taught her that she already did. Mother had 15 years before her first parole hearing. At 64 years old, with health issues already emerging, she'd likely die in prison. Die alone. Die knowing the daughter she'd tried to sacrifice had not only survived but thrived. Die knowing she'd destroyed her family by trying to choose which daughter deserved to exist. The reception continued into the evening. I watched the women network and share stories and support each other. These weren't people bound by blood. They were bound by survival, by choice, by mutual respect, by the understanding that sometimes the family you build is stronger than the family you're born into. This was my family now. Sarah, who'd pulled me from the water without hesitation. My assistant, who'd protected my business when everyone thought I was dead. Thomas Reed, who'd believed me when I had nothing but a story and a will to fight. These 12 women who understood what it meant to rebuild after the people who should have loved you tried to destroy you. My therapy group, survivors of family estrangement, who met weekly and never asked me to be smaller than I was. These were my people. The ones who saw me, who valued me, who didn't need me to sacrifice anything to earn their love. Father had sent a letter 3 months after sentencing. It arrived at my Seattle office, forwarded by Thomas with a note. "You don't have to read this, but I thought you should decide." I'd read it once. It was sincere, an acknowledgement of failure, an expression of regret, an apology that came 35 years too late. "Sophia, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know what I did, what I allowed to happen, is unforgivable. I let your mother and sister plan your murder. I heard them. I knew. And I said nothing because I've spent my entire life avoiding conflict, even when that conflict could have saved my daughter's life. I chose comfort over courage, peace over protection. And you almost died because of my cowardice. I testified against them because it was the right thing to do, but also because it was the only thing I had left to give you. The truth. I know it doesn't undo the damage, doesn't change the decades of choosing them over you, but it's all I have. I don't expect you to respond. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see now what I should have seen 35 years ago. You were always enough. You were always worthy. You were always the daughter who deserved better. And I failed you in every way a father can fail a child. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. But it's true. I'm proud of what you've built. Proud that you survived what they did to you. Proud that you're stronger than all of us combined. You didn't need me to become who you are. But you deserved a father who supported you anyway. I'm sorry I wasn't that father. I hope someday you can find peace. James Morgan. I'd read it, filed it away, and never responded. Not out of cruelty, out of completeness. The version of myself who needed parental approval, who craved father's acknowledgement, who would have cried tears of gratitude at this letter, that version had drowned in the Pacific Ocean. The woman who survived didn't need his apology, didn't need his pride. Didn't need anything from him at all. I belong to myself now. As the foundation's reception wound down, I walked to the dock's edge one final time. Sarah appeared beside me. "You okay?" "I'm standing on the place where I almost died," I said quietly. "And I'm okay. That feels like a miracle." "You made your own miracle," Sarah said. "You didn't wait to be saved. You saved yourself." I looked at my reflection in the dark water, the same water that had tried to claim me. My hand touched the base of my throat where the pearl necklace had hung. Nothing there now. I didn't need symbols of belonging. I didn't need family heirlooms to feel like I mattered. I belonged to myself. And that was enough. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I kicked off my heels, walked to the end of the dock, and dove. Not falling this time. Choosing. The water was cold and clean. And when I surfaced, I was laughing. Alive. Free. Sarah and the other women cheered from the dock. I swam with strength, with purpose. No longer fighting the water but moving through it. Powerful. Intentional. Unstoppable. My business was thriving. After the trial, clients flooded in. People wanted to work with the CEO who'd survived attempted murder and come back stronger. Revenue tripled in 6 months. My company was now worth over $200 million. Everything my family had tried to steal had multiplied beyond their wildest dreams. And they'd gotten none of it. I'd restructured my will. Everything went to the foundation, to Sarah, to the people who'd actually earned it. Not a single dollar would ever go to Victoria or Mother or even Father. They tried to inherit my empire through murder. Instead, they'd inherited prison cells and the knowledge that I'd succeeded beyond measure without them. The foundation was already helping 15 women rebuild their businesses after family betrayal. We'd prevented 3 hostile takeovers by family members. We'd secured legal protection for 5 women whose relatives were trying to steal their companies. We'd provided emergency cybersecurity services for 8 businesses compromised by family sabotage. We were making a difference. And we were just getting started. 6 months after the foundation launch, I was invited to speak at a conference for entrepreneurs. The topic, Surviving Family Betrayal in Business. I stood on that stage in front of 2,000 people and told my story. Not the sanitized version. The whole truth. The pearl necklace. The push. The swim. The 3 months of gathering evidence. The trial. The verdict. The freedom that came after. When I finished, the room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room erupted in a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, dozens of people approached me, told me their stories. The brother who embezzled from their business. The mother who sued for control of their company. The sister who sabotaged their partnerships. The father who tried to force them out of the business they'd built. So many people carrying the weight of family betrayal. Believing they were alone. Believing they deserved it. Believing they had to choose between justice and family. I told each one the same thing. You don't have to choose. You can have both justice and peace. You can walk away from toxic family and build a better one. You can refuse to be the sacrifice and still be a good person. You deserve people who celebrate your success, not resent it. You deserve family who lifts you up, not pushes you down. And if the family you were born into can't do that, you have permission to build a family that can. 3 of those people joined the foundation's board. 5 became clients. 12 signed up for our support groups. The ripple effect was extraordinary. My story had given people permission to tell theirs. To stop protecting people who'd hurt them. To choose themselves. One woman approached me at the end, tears streaming down her face. My sister embezzled $300,000 from our family business. I knew. I had proof. But I didn't press charges because my parents said family doesn't destroy family. They made me the villain for wanting accountability. I've carried that guilt for 8 years. She looked at me. But listening to your story, I realized I wasn't the villain. She was. And protecting her was destroying me. I'm filing charges tomorrow. Thank you for showing me I'm allowed to choose myself. I hugged her. You were always allowed. You just needed permission to believe it. Now go get your justice. That's what the foundation became. Permission. For survivors to stop protecting their abusers. To stop sacrificing themselves for people who didn't deserve it. To stop carrying guilt that wasn't theirs to carry. To fight back. To speak up. To choose themselves without apology. The 1-year anniversary of the verdict arrived in October. I didn't visit Victoria or Mother in prison. Didn't send letters. Didn't try to reconcile. Some people asked if I'd ever forgive them. If I'd ever try to rebuild a relationship. The answer was simple, no. Forgiveness is for people who show remorse. My family showed none. Even in prison, according to Thomas who tracked such things, Victoria blamed me for ruining her life. Mother maintained she'd done nothing wrong. Father sent occasional letters that I filed without reading. They wanted absolution without earning it. They wanted my forgiveness to relieve their guilt. But I didn't exist to make them feel better about trying to kill me. I existed for myself. For the foundation. For the women I was helping. For the life I'd built from the ashes of the one they tried to burn down. Someone once asked me, don't you think about what your life would have been like if they'd just loved you? If they'd supported you instead of resenting you? Of course I thought about it. But not with sadness. With clarity. If they'd loved me, I might never have left. Might never have built my business. Might never have become the woman I am now. might never have learned that I didn't need their approval to be enough. Their betrayal freed me. Not the attempted murder. That was traumatic and terrible, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But their lifetime of making me feel invisible taught me to see myself. Their refusal to value me taught me to value myself. Their attempt to erase me taught me to make myself unforgettable. I didn't forgive them, but I thanked them silently for showing me who they really were, for pushing me hard enough that I learned to swim, for underestimating me so completely that I could destroy them with their own words. The Foundation's second year was even more successful. We helped 43 women. We prevented 12 family takeovers. We provided legal support for 8 criminal cases against family members who'd committed fraud, embezzlement, or worse. We became a model for other organizations. Other cities started their own chapters. The movement grew, and with every woman we helped, I felt more complete, more whole, more certain that I'd taken my trauma and transformed it into something meaningful. This is what victory looks like. Not revenge. Transformation. Using what tried to break you to build something unbreakable. On the 2-year anniversary of the night they pushed me, I returned to that dock one final time. Alone this time. Just me and the water and the memory of who I'd been. I stood at the edge looking down, and I realized something profound. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had fueled me through the investigation, the trial, the aftermath, it was gone. Replaced by something better. Peace. Purpose. Power. They'd tried to drown the invisible daughter. Instead, they'd created the woman who couldn't be ignored. The woman who built an empire. The woman who survived. The woman who fought back. The woman who won. I didn't jump into the water this time. Didn't need to prove I could swim anymore. I just stood there, breathing in the salt air, feeling the breeze, alive and free and exactly where I was meant to be. Then I turned around and walked away. Left that dock behind. Left the memory of drowning behind. Left the family who'd tried to kill me behind. Walked toward the future I'd built. The life I'd earned. The family I'd chosen. And I never looked back. Because here's what I learned. They say blood is thicker than water. But the full quote is different. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose are stronger than the bonds we're born into. My family tried to drown me. Instead, I learned to swim. And then I taught others. Some people will never see your worth. Not because you lack it, but because acknowledging it would force them to face their own emptiness. That's not your burden to carry. That's not your problem to solve. That's not your responsibility to fix. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or sacrificed yourself trying to keep peace, or wondered why you're never enough, listen to me, you are not the problem. You never were. The people who should have protected you failed. But their failure doesn't define your worth. You define your worth. The bonds you choose can save your life when the bonds you were born into try to destroy it. Find your people. Build your family. Create your empire. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you're disposable. Because you're not. You matter. Your life matters. Your success matters. Your happiness matters. You matter. My name is Sophia Morgan. I'm 37 years old. I'm the founder and CEO of a cybersecurity firm worth $200 million. I'm the director of a foundation that helps survivors rebuild their lives. I'm a sister to the family I chose. I'm a friend to people who earned it. I'm a survivor who refused to stay submerged. And I'm free. If this story resonated with you, I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from family to save yourself? Have you ever been the scapegoat, the sacrifice, the invisible one? What helped you realize your worth? Your story matters. Share it. Because someone else out there needs to hear they're not alone. They need to know it's possible to survive, to rebuild, to thrive. They need permission to choose themselves. And maybe, just maybe, your comment will be the permission they need. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more stories about survival, justice, and refusing to accept what people say you deserve. Hit like if you believe family should be chosen, not just endured. And share this video with anyone who needs to hear that being the forgotten daughter doesn't mean being forgettable. That being pushed down doesn't mean staying down. That being told you're worthless doesn't make it true. Remember this, you don't need to be seen by everyone. You just need to see yourself. And once you do, once you really see yourself and your worth and your power, nobody can make you invisible again. Nobody can push you overboard. Nobody can drown you. Because you've learned to swim. And you've learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting free. The daughter they threw away learned to swim. And she built an empire while they watched from behind bars. That's not revenge. That's justice. That's survival. That's freedom. That's everything. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go write yours. Make it powerful. Make it true. Make it count. And never let anyone tell you that you don't deserve the life you're fighting for. You do. You always did. Now go prove it.